If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your friends and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow. The cave walls were breathing. I swear they were breathing. I've spent 20 years exploring Carlsbad Caverns as a park ranger, but I'd never seen anything like this. The limestone surface pulsed slowly, like the inside of a giant stomach. As I ran my flashlight over it, something dark and sticky dripped down, leaving trails that looked too much like blood for comfort. My name is Derek Mitchell. I used to be a cave rescue specialist until that terrible day 3 years ago when I made a mistake that got my whole team killed. Now I mostly do routine cave inspections, trying to forget the sound of falling rocks and screaming. But what I discovered today, I wish I could forget it too. It started as a normal morning check of the lower caves. The tourists wouldn't arrive for another 2 hours, giving me time to make sure all the paths were safe. I noticed something odd right away. The air felt different, warmer, wetter, like being inside someone's mouth. That's when I found the first body, or what was left of it. The corpse was half absorbed into the cave wall, like it was being digested. The rock around it had turned soft and gooey, forming what looked like small stomach pouches. The victim's face was frozen in terror, skin partially dissolved. I'd seen a lot of horrible things in cave rescues, but this made me throw up. I radioed for backup immediately. Within an hour, a government team arrived in white hazmat suits, led by Dr. Sarah Chen. They brought all sorts of fancy equipment I'd never seen before. The way they acted, too professional, too prepared, made me think they knew something about this. "Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Chen said, her voice muffled behind her mask, "we need you to show us exactly where you found the body. And please don't touch anything. The bacterial levels in this cave are unusual." As we went deeper into the cave, I noticed my skin was itching. The cave fungus infection I'd picked up last month was acting up again, making my arms feel like they were on fire. The doctors said it was harmless, just a new species they hadn't seen before. Now I wasn't so sure. We reached the body, but something had changed. The wall around it had spread, forming more of those stomach-like pouches, and inside each one, we could see shapes, human shapes. "My God," whispered Dr. Chen, "it's already started processing them." "Processing?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Before she could respond, a low rumble shook the cave. The walls didn't just look like they were breathing anymore. They were moving, pulsing. And somewhere in the darkness, something massive was stirring. Dr. Chen grabbed her radio. "Command, we have confirmation. The system is active. I repeat, the digestive system is active." I looked at her, my heart pounding. "What digestive system?" She turned to me, her eyes wide behind her mask. "The cave, Mr. Mitchell. The entire cave. It's one giant stomach, and it's hungry." The fungus on my arms burned worse than ever, and deep in my mind, I heard something that felt like a voice, ancient, alien, and very, very aware. We weren't alone in these caves anymore. And whatever was down here with us, it had been waiting a very long time to feed. Night fell in the caves, though down here it's always dark anyway. The government team set up bright lights that cast long shadows on the walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were moving even when we weren't. My arms wouldn't stop burning. The fungus had spread, creating weird patterns that looked like cave maps on my skin. But something stranger was happening. I could feel the cave around me, like how you can feel when someone's watching you. "Movement in Section C." "One of," the team members shouted. We all turned our lights that way. What we saw made my heart stop. The cave wall was opening, not cracking like in a normal cave-in, but peeling apart like someone pulling back a curtain. Behind it was something that shouldn't exist. It looked almost human-shaped, but made entirely of cave rock and glowing fungus. Its body seemed to melt into the walls themselves. Where its face should be, there was just a dark hole ringed with crystal teeth. Someone screamed, I think it was me. "Hold your positions!" Dr. Chen yelled, but it was too late. The thing, the cave Sasquatch, as my mind stupidly labeled it, reached out with arms made of stalactites. Two team members, Mike and Lisa, couldn't back away fast enough. The creature didn't grab them. Instead, the floor beneath them turned soft like quicksand. They sank up to their waists before we could react. But the worst part? The cave floor started bubbling around them just like a stomach digesting food. "Help!" Lisa screamed. "It burns!" I tried to reach them, but Dr. Chen held me back. "Don't touch them. The bacterial colony is already active." I watched in horror as something spread across Mike and Lisa's hazmat suits. The same fungus that was on my arms. But on them, it grew incredibly fast, eating through their suits. Their skin started to look like cave wall. That's when the voice in my head got stronger. It wasn't exactly words, more like feelings and pictures. But somehow I understood. The cave was talking to me through the fungus. It's trying to communicate, I told Dr. Chen. The fungus infection. It's like a telephone line to whatever this thing is. "That's impossible," she said, but her voice shook. "Unless the MTF-3117 project actually worked." Before I could ask what that meant, Mike and Lisa started changing more. Their bodies were merging with the cave floor. Their screams got quieter, not because they stopped screaming, but because their mouths were filling with crystal. The cave Sasquatch watched this happen. I could feel its satisfaction, like a person enjoying a good meal. Through my fungal connection, I understood more than I wanted to. This cave wasn't just a cave, it was one giant, ancient digestive system, and we were inside a creature that had been eating things for millions of years. The government hadn't discovered it by accident. They'd been studying it, maybe even feeding it. "We need to leave," I said. "Now." "We can't," Dr. Chen replied. "Protocol says." A deep rumble cut her off. More sections of the wall began to peel open. More crystal-toothed mouths appeared. The cave Sasquatch wasn't alone. It was just one part of something much bigger. Through my burning arms, I felt the cave's hunger. It had been waiting so long for a proper meal. The few tourists and hikers it had managed to catch over the years weren't enough. Now it had us, a whole team of people to digest. As we backed away from the advancing creatures, I saw Mike and Lisa one last time. They were almost completely absorbed into the cave now, but their eyes were still moving, still aware. The cave wasn't just eating people. It was keeping them conscious while it digested them. And through my fungal infection, I could feel their terror as clearly as if it were my own. We ran deeper into the cave system, but I knew we weren't escaping. We were just heading further into the belly of the beast. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, something much worse was waiting for us. Morning came, according to our watches, but time felt strange down here now. We'd lost 3 more team members during the night. The cave had taken them so quietly. One minute they were there, the next they were just gone, leaving only wet sounds behind in the darkness. My arms were completely covered in fungus now. It had spread to my chest, and I could feel it creeping up my neck. But the weird thing was, I wasn't scared of it anymore. Through it, I could sense everything in the cave system, every tunnel, every chamber, every stomach-like pocket where people were being processed. "We found something," called out Agent Rodriguez, one of the 4 team members still alive. We followed him to a chamber we'd never seen before. The walls were covered in ancient cave paintings, but these weren't normal ones. They showed people feeding other people to the cave. "These paintings are at least 10,000 years old," Dr. Chen said, her voice shaking. "The native tribes, they knew. They've always known." I touched the wall near the paintings. Images flooded my mind through the fungus, memories of ancient ceremonies, of sacrifices. The cave had been eating people for thousands of years, Sometimes they were willing sacrifices, sometimes they weren't. That's not all, Rodriguez said. He pointed his light at a modern metal door built into the cave wall. It had a government logo I didn't recognize. Dr. Chen's face went pale. This isn't what we thought, this facility. We weren't studying the cave system. We were feeding it, training it. Training it for what? I asked, but I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. She pulled out a tablet and showed us files marked Project Fungal Soldier. My stomach turned as I read. The government hadn't just discovered the cave creature, they were trying to use it. The fungus infection wasn't an accident. They had been deliberately infecting people, trying to create soldiers who could connect with and control the cave system. Most subjects died, Dr. Chen said quietly. Or worse, got absorbed into the bacterial colony. You're the first one who survived this level of infection. I looked at my fungus-covered arms. You did this to me, on purpose. Before she could answer, a scream echoed through the tunnels. We ran toward it and found Thompson, another team member, halfway inside a cave wall, but he wasn't being digested. Like the others, the wall was going into him, or he was becoming the wall. I couldn't tell which anymore. Help me, he begged. I can feel all of them, everyone the cave has ever eaten. They're still here, still thinking, still screaming. Through my fungal connection, I felt it too. The cave wasn't just one creature, it was thousands. Every person it had ever digested was still conscious in some way, their minds preserved in the bacterial network that ran through the entire cave system. And now they were all thinking together, learning, growing, hungry. Rodriguez tried to pull Thompson free, but the cave wall grabbed him too. I watched in horror as both men's bodies twisted and changed. Their skin turned to stone, their bones to crystal. Their screams turned into wet, gurgling sounds as their mouths filled with glowing fungus. "Run!" Dr. Chen yelled. But as we turned to flee, every tunnel around us started to close. The cave was directing us, herding us like cattle towards something deeper in its gut. My fungal infection burned worse than ever, and with it came a terrible understanding. The cave wasn't just hungry anymore. It was evolving. Every person it absorbed made it smarter. Now it had eaten scientists, soldiers, people with knowledge it could use. And through my connection, I could feel its plan. It didn't want to just eat us anymore. It wanted to spread. Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "Your infection. You might be our only chance to stop this, but we have to get to the central chamber." "What's in the central chamber?" I asked. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "The heart of the digestive system, and the worst thing we ever created down here." As if responding to her words, a deep rumble shook the entire cave. Something massive was moving below us, something that made the cave's Sasquatch look tiny in comparison, and we were heading right toward it. The deeper we went into the cave, the worse things got. Only Dr. Chen and I were left now. The fungus had spread across most of my body, and I could feel the cave's thoughts more clearly than my own. The things it showed me made me wish I could close my mind, like I could close my eyes. We found the central chamber. I almost threw up when we entered, not because of what I saw, but because of what I felt. This was the cave's main stomach, where it did most of its digesting, and it was full. "Oh God," Dr. Chen whispered, "they're all still alive." The walls were transparent here, like dirty glass. Inside them, we could see people, dozens of them. Some were fresh victims, tourists who'd gone missing recently. Others looked older, their bodies partly turned to crystal, but their eyes still moving, still aware. Through my fungus connection, I could feel their thoughts. They were screaming, inside their heads, begging for help or death or anything but this endless digestion. But that wasn't the worst part. In the center of the chamber stood what looked like a giant tree made of crystal and stone. But it wasn't a tree. It was moving, breathing. As we watched, it pulled one of its branch-like arms out of the wall, bringing with it a half-digested body. The body wasn't dead. The cave was using it like a puppet, controlling it with strands of glowing fungus. What is that thing? I asked, though I already knew from the cave's thoughts. The first test subject, Dr. Chen said, Patient Zero of Project Fungal Soldier. We thought he died 20 years ago. Instead, he merged with the cave system, became its brain, its heart. The thing that used to be human turned toward us. Where its face should have been, there was a swirling mass of crystals and fungus. It reached out with more arms, and the walls around us started to move. The fungicide weapon, Dr. Chen said quickly, pulling something from her pack. It looked like a spray gun made of thick metal. It's experimental, but it might... She never finished. The floor beneath her turned soft, and she sank up to her knees. I tried to grab her, but more arms made of rock and crystal shot out of the walls. They grabbed her, and I had to watch as they pulled her into one of those transparent stomach sections. Mitchell, she screamed as the rock began to cover her. The fungicide. It has to go into the main heart, the crystal tree. It's the only... Oh, wait to... Her voice cut off as crystal filled her mouth. But her eyes stayed open, aware. Another consciousness added to the cave's collection. I grabbed the fungicide weapon she'd dropped. Through my infection, I could feel the cave thing's anger. It knew what I was thinking. All around me, the walls started to close in. More crystal arms reached for me. The puppet bodies it had made from its victims started walking toward me with jerky movements. But the fungus infection worked both ways. I could feel the cave's thoughts, but it could feel mine too. And right now, I was thinking about every cave rescue mission I'd ever done. Every tunnel I'd mapped, every path I'd learned. I knew these caves better than anyone. Maybe even better than the thing controlling them. You want to use me? I said out loud, though I knew it could feel my thoughts. You want my knowledge? Then take it. Take all of it. I opened my mind completely, flooding the fungal network with every memory I had of the caves. Maps, tunnels, rescue routes. Too much information for even its giant mind to process at once. I felt its confusion ripple through the bacterial network, and in that moment of distraction, I ran. Not toward the exit, that would be impossible now, but toward the crystal tree, toward the heart of this whole twisted digestive system. Behind me, I could hear the walls cracking, the crystal arms smashing, the puppet bodies stumbling as the cave thing tried to make sense of all the information I'd dumped into its mind. But I knew it wouldn't stay confused for long. I clutched the fungicide weapon, running faster as I felt the cave's confusion turn to rage. The crystal tree was just ahead, its branches reaching for me. I had one shot at this, one chance to end it all. And somewhere in the dark behind me, something huge was moving, something that made even the cave thing seem small. The real horror was coming. I just hoped I could finish this before it arrived. I reached the crystal tree just as the cave's rage hit me full force through the fungal connection. The pain was so bad, I almost dropped the fungicide weapon. Every part of my infected body felt like it was on fire. The crystal tree's branches whipped toward me like angry snakes. One caught my leg, and I felt the cold burn of rock starting to grow over my skin. But I wasn't fighting it anymore. Instead, I let the fungus spread faster. You want to absorb me? I shouted. Then do it. Take me in. The cave thing hesitated. Through our connection, I could feel its confusion. This wasn't how prey was supposed to act. But its hunger was too strong to resist. The crystal branches wrapped around me tighter, pulling me toward the main trunk. That's when I heard it. A sound like a mountain cracking in half. The real monster had arrived. Through the fungal network, I saw what it was, the cave's true form. Not just a digestive system, but a giant mouth that had been growing under the earth for millions of years. And it was finally ready to rise up and feed on the world above. But it had made one big mistake. It had connected itself to my mind, trying to use my knowledge. Now I could use that connection too. As the crystal tree tried to absorb me, I opened my mind wide and pushed every painful memory I had into the fungal network. The cave thing screeched as my memories hit it, the cave collapse I'd caused. The sound of my team dying, years of guilt and pain and nightmares. Real human emotions, more than its ancient mind could handle. Its grip on me weakened for just a second. That's all I needed. I brought up the fungicide weapon and sprayed it straight into the crystal tree's center. The effect was instant. The cave thing screamed, not just with one voice, but with thousands. Every person it had ever absorbed was feeling the pain. The crystal branches around me started to crack. The walls began to bubble and melt. Through my fungal connection, I felt the cave's digestive system start to fail. It was throwing up, trying to get rid of the fungicide, but that only spread the poison faster through its system. That's when things got really bad. As the cave thing died, it lost control of all the people it had absorbed. Suddenly, all those minds were free, but they were trapped in walls and rocks with no real bodies left. Their panic and fear hit me through the fungal network like a tidal wave. I felt everything the cave felt as it died. The crystal tree shattered, the transparent stomach walls burst, spilling half-digested bodies. The huge mouth under the earth screamed one last time, then started to collapse. The entire cave system was falling apart. Rocks were falling everywhere. But I couldn't move. The fungus had spread too far. I was part of the cave now, connected to every dying part of it. As the ceiling started to cave in, I saw government helicopters arriving above, through cracks in the rock. They were too late to help, but maybe they could contain whatever was left. The last thing I felt through the fungal network was something unexpected, gratitude. Not from the cave thing, but from all the people trapped inside it. They were finally going to rest. Then the roof fell in, and everything went dark. I woke up in a government hospital 3 weeks later. Most of my body was still covered in fungus, but it wasn't spreading anymore. It wasn't doing much of anything, really, like it was sleeping. The doctors told me the cave system had been sealed off. They poured tons of concrete down there, trying to make sure nothing could ever get out. They classified everything that happened as a natural disaster, a cave collapse that killed some. Tourists and government researchers, but I know the truth. I can still feel it sometimes, especially at night. The fungus might be sleeping, but it's not dead. And neither are all those minds that were trapped in the cave. They're still down there, buried under rock and concrete, dreaming their crystal dreams. Sometimes when I touch cave walls, any cave walls, I can hear them whispering. The doctors say that's impossible, that the fungal network was destroyed, but I know better, because every once in a while, I catch glimpses of other cave systems through the fungus, other deep places under the earth, other hungry things that have been growing and waiting. The cave in Carlsbad might be sealed, but it wasn't the only one of its kind, not even close. And somewhere in the dark under our feet, they're still growing, still hungry, still learning, still digesting. In a different cave system miles away, a group of bacteria starts to glow with a familiar light. A small patch of fungus spreads across the wall, forming patterns that look almost like a map. Or maybe a plan. The earth has many mouths, and they're all starting to wake up. I knew something was wrong when I saw their eyes moving. The research team was completely frozen, like ice statues in a museum, but their eyes followed me as I walked past the window of their cabin, all 6 of them watching me, alive but trapped in ice. My name is Bill Harrison, and I'm a park ranger at Denali National Park in Alaska. I've worked here for 20 years, and I know every mountain, every trail, and every type of weather, but what happened that morning was something I'd never seen before. It started with a missed check-in. The research team was supposed to radio us every morning at sunrise, but they hadn't called for over 24 hours. Something in my gut told me to go check on them, even though we usually wait longer. Maybe it was because of my past. You see, when I was 10 years old, my entire tribe was lost in a mysterious ice storm. The only thing I have left from that day is this old amulet my grandmother gave me just before everyone disappeared. The morning was strangely quiet as I hiked up to their cabin. No birds singing, no wind blowing, just the crunch of snow under my boots. My thermometer showed 40 degrees, which was way too cold for this time of year. When I reached the cabin, the first thing I noticed was how dark it was inside. No lights, no fire in the fireplace, just darkness and those eyes watching me through the frosted windows. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the cabin door. The inside was even colder than outside, if you can believe that. Dr. Sarah Chen, the team leader, was frozen mid-step, like she'd been trying to run away from something. But her eyes moved to look at me, and I could see tears frozen on her cheeks. That's when my radio crackled to life. Ranger Harrison, this is Control. We have a special government team heading your way. Do not, I repeat, do not try to thaw anyone out. Wait for... The radio went dead. In the silence that followed, I heard a crack from outside. The warm spring weather had been melting the snow around the cabin, and now I could see something underneath. Old wooden poles and stone circles arranged in a pattern I recognized from my childhood. It was a tribal burial ground, one that had been hidden under the ice for who knows how long. As I stared at the burial ground, something moved under the melting ice. Something big, and my amulet, which had been quiet for 35 years, suddenly turned ice cold against my chest. The government team showed up 20 minutes later in black helicopters. They were carrying strange equipment I'd never seen before, glowing containers and machines that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi movie. Their leader was a woman in a white coat who looked like she'd seen a ghost when she spotted my amulet. "Mr. Harrison," she said quietly, "we've been looking for that amulet for a very long time." Before I could ask what she meant, one of her team members screamed and pointed outside. We all turned to look. The snow was falling upward against gravity, like someone had reversed time, and in the distance, through the swirling snow, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A massive white shape with too many legs, moving between the trees. Its eyes glowed like stars trapped in ice. I touched my amulet without thinking, and it pulsed with cold energy. Somehow I knew this was just the beginning. Whatever killed my tribe 35 years ago had come back, and this time it was hungry for more than just my people's souls. Looking at the frozen researchers with their pleading eyes, I realized this was going to be the longest day of my life. What I didn't know then was that it would also be the day I finally learned the truth about my tribe's death, about this amulet around my neck, and about the ancient horror we had just woken up from its icy sleep. The sun started to set, and I've never been so scared of the dark in my life. The government team set up their equipment around the cabin. They put strange metal boxes in a circle and turned them on. Each box hummed and glowed with a blue light. Dr. Evans, the woman in the white coat, told me they were quantum containment units, whatever that meant. "The temperature's dropping fast," one of the team members said, checking his equipment. "It's hitting 60 degrees now." That's when we heard it, a sound like cracking ice, but it seemed to come from inside the walls. I watched in horror as something white and misty passed right through the solid wall, like a ghost made of frost. The air temperature dropped so fast it hurt to breathe. "Get back!" Dr. Evans shouted, but it was too late. The mist took shape. It looked like a wolf, but wrong. It was too big, with legs that bent in strange ways and eyes that glowed like frozen stars. The Ice Dogman. Just looking at it made my head hurt, like trying to understand a puzzle that didn't make sense. One of the government team members, a young guy named Mike, tried to run. The creature turned its head toward him, and I watched as ice crystals started forming inside Mike's body. I could see them growing under his skin, spreading like frost. On a window, His eyes were wide with fear as he froze from the inside out, just like the research team. My amulet burned cold against my chest, and suddenly I could hear voices, whispers in the ancient language of my tribe. The amulet started to glow with a pale blue light, and I saw shapes moving inside it, like people trapped in ice. "Your tribe," Dr. Evans said quietly, watching the amulet. "They weren't killed by the ice storm. They sacrificed themselves to trap." "That thing," she pointed at the ice dog man. "We found their records in the ice. They used quantum science without even knowing it. Ancient magic that worked like modern physics." The creature moved closer, and more ice started spreading across the walls. In the frost patterns, I could see faces forming, the faces of everyone it had frozen. They were trying to speak, their mouths moving in silent screams. "The experiment," Dr. Evans continued, backing away slowly. "We were trying to study how consciousness could survive in near absolute zero temperatures. We found the burial ground, and something went wrong. We woke it up, and it merged with our quantum field." The ice dogman turned its head toward me, and I felt memories flooding back. Memories of the day my tribe died. I saw them standing in a circle, holding hands, my grandmother leading them in an ancient chant. They weren't running from the storm. They were creating it, using it to trap this thing. "Your bloodline," Dr. Evans said. "Your grandmother's amulet. They're connected to it somehow. You might be the only one who can—" She never finished. The ice dog man moved faster than anything that big should be able to move. It passed right through her, and I watched helplessly as she froze solid, her hand still reaching out toward me. The creature circled me slowly, frost spreading with each step. Through the window I could see the northern lights dancing in impossible, in patterns, like they were responding to the thing's presence. The temperature dropped lower and lower, colder than anything on Earth should be able to get. I clutched my amulet tight, feeling the souls of my tribe trapped inside it. They had given their lives to stop this thing once before. Now I knew why my grandmother had saved me, why she'd given me the amulet. I was the last one left, the last one who could stop it. And the night was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat in the corner of the cabin, surrounded by frozen people, watching their eyes follow my every move. The worst part was that I could hear them now, not with my ears, but in my head. Whispers, prayers, and pleas for help. As the sun rose, bringing no warmth to the frozen landscape, I noticed something strange happening to the ice on the walls. It was forming patterns, not random ones, but words and pictures. The frozen researchers were trying to communicate. Dr. Chen's ice pattern showed numbers and diagrams. Even frozen solid, she was trying to explain something. I moved closer to the wall, my breath creating little clouds in the freezing air. The patterns showed a circle of machines, the same machines the government team had brought, but connected to something else, something old and tribal looking. "The experiment," I whispered, touching the cold wall. "What were you really doing up here?" That's when the headache started. Every time I touched the ice, memories flooded back. Not just my memories, but older ones. My grandmother teaching me tribal words I'd forgotten. The elders talking about guardian spirits and doorways in the ice. The songs they used to sing during the winter storms. I found Dr. Evans' notebook in her frozen hand. My fingers shook as I pried it loose, guilty about disturbing her, even though I knew she could still see me. The pages were full of notes about something called quantum entanglement and consciousness preservation. They had found my tribe's burial ground months ago and noticed something weird. The ice there never melted, and it seemed to hold memories somehow. The government team had brought machines to study it. They thought they could use the ancient tribal site to help them understand how to keep human minds alive in frozen states, but they didn't understand what they were dealing with. The old spirits, the ones my grandmother used to warn me about, weren't meant to be studied like this. Outside, The snow was still falling upward, defying gravity. The clouds above had formed into spiral patterns I recognized from my grandmother's stories. Warning signs. The ice dogman was changing the weather, making the whole mountain more like itself. My amulet grew colder throughout the day. Sometimes when I held it, I could see my tribe in the ice, not just their bodies, but their souls, all connected together like a frozen web. They weren't just trapped by the ice dogman. They had become part of it, feeding it their memories and power. "We have to stop it," Dr. Chen's voice whispered in my head. Somehow the ice was letting the frozen people talk to me. "It's not just about us anymore, it's growing stronger. Once it freezes enough souls, it can spread beyond the mountain." I looked at the ancient burial ground through the window. The ice there was almost completely melted now, revealing more tribal artifacts. Carved stones arranged in circles, old wooden totems, and in the center a place that looked like it was meant for something exactly the size of my amulet. That's when I remembered the rest of my grandmother's last words, the ones I'd blocked out all these years. "When it wakes again, you'll have to finish what we started. The price will be high, but the alternative is worse." I clutched the amulet tight, feeling the trapped souls of my tribe pulse with cold energy. The sun was setting again, and in the distance I heard the ice dogman howl, a sound like breaking glaciers and screaming wind. I knew what I had to do, but knowing something and being ready for it are two very different things. The second night brought horrors I'll never forget. It started when I saw myself walk through the cabin door. Not a reflection, another me, made entirely of ice, moving, just like I do. The ice dogman had learned how to copy people. Soon there were ice copies of everyone, the researchers, Dr. Evans, even my grandmother. They looked so real, it made my head spin. "Don't trust what you see," Dr. Chen's voice whispered in my head. "It's trying to confuse you." The ice copies started moving closer, their feet making crackling sounds on the frozen floor. Behind them, the ice dogman watched with its star-bright eyes. I backed away until I hit the wall, my amulet pulsing with cold against my chest. Then came the worst part. One of the government's machines started beeping, the ones they'd brought to study the ice. A red light flashed, and suddenly I heard Dr. Evans's frozen body crack. She was breaking apart, still conscious, still feeling everything. Her eyes begged me to help her. "I'm sorry," I whispered, knowing what I had to do. I picked up a chair and, trying not to look at her eyes, shattered her frozen body. It was that or let her suffer as she slowly cracked apart. The pieces of her skittered across the floor, and I knew she could still feel everything, still think, still remember. The ice dogman seemed to grow stronger with each person it froze. The temperature dropped so low that the air itself started to crystallize. My breath came out in chunks of ice that hung in the air like tiny crystals. I knew I had to do something. Looking at my grandmother's ice copy, I remembered more of her teachings. "Sometimes," she used to say, "you have to walk through the cold to understand it." I took off my jacket. The cold hit me like a punch to the chest. Ice started forming on my skin, but I didn't fight it. I let it spread, just enough to feel what the frozen people were feeling, just enough to step halfway into the spirit world. That's when I saw the truth. Through my half-frozen eyes, I could see what the government had really done. Their machines weren't just for studying the ice. They were weapons. They had tried to control the ancient tribal spirits, to turn them into something they could use. The ice dogman wasn't just a spirit anymore. It was part machine, part ancient magic, and part angry god. The ice copies moved closer. I could barely move now, frost covering most of my body, but I could see clearly for the first time. The burial ground wasn't just a graveyard, it was a prison. My tribe hadn't just died to stop the ice dogman, they had become its jailers, their souls bound together to keep it locked away, until the government came with their machines and broke the circle. The ice dogman towered over me now. Up close I could see patterns swirling inside it, faces, memories, pieces of everyone it had taken. It reached out one misty paw, and I felt the cold trying to pull my soul out of my body. But my grandmother's amulet blazed with blue fire, pushing back the cold. The voices of my tribe sang in my head, teaching me words I'd forgotten, showing me what I needed to do. To stop a spirit this strong, I would need more than just my tribe's souls. I looked at the frozen people around me. Dr. Chen, the research team, the government workers. They were already trapped in the ice. Maybe, just maybe, their souls could help power the old prison again. But first, I had to survive the night. And the ice dogman wasn't done showing me all the horrible things it could do with the cold. The third morning came with a strange purple light in the sky. The whole mountain was covered in ice now, shining like a giant mirror. I knew what I had to do, but that didn't make it any easier. I need your help, I said to the frozen people around me. All of you. Through the ice, I saw their eyes move in understanding. They knew what it meant. Their souls would have to join my tribes in the amulet. It was the only way to power the ancient prison again. I wasn't just Bill Harrison anymore. The cold had changed me. Ice crystals covered half my body, and I could feel the spirit world all around me. A place of endless winter, where souls glowed like northern lights. The ice dogman stood in the middle of the burial ground, bigger than ever. It had grown so powerful that the air froze solid around it, falling to the ground in chunks of crystallized sky. Its many legs left tracks of absolute darkness, places so cold that even light froze. I walked out to face it, my grandmother's amulet glowing bright blue against my chest. The voices of my tribe sang in my head, teaching me the words of the ritual. With each step, I felt more memories return, not just mine, but my grandmother's and her grandmother's before her. "You want souls?" I called out to the creature. "Come and get them." It charged at me, its star-bright eyes blazing, but I stood my ground. I began to sing the ancient words, my voice carrying in the frozen air. Inside the cabin, the ice holding the frozen people began to crack and shatter, but their bodies didn't break. Instead, their souls floated free, glowing with pale light. The government's machines started sparking and humming. They weren't just ordinary machines. They were designed to trap and control spirits. Now, I could use them to help cage this thing. The souls of the frozen people swirled around me like snow in a blizzard. I could feel their thoughts, their memories, their strength. Dr. Chen's brilliant mind, Dr. Evans' determination, the research team's curiosity, all of it flowed into my amulet, joining with my tribe's ancient power. The ice dogman tried to run, but it was too late. The burial ground lit up, each stone and totem glowing with remembered power. The circle was complete again. I stepped into the center and held up the amulet. "Feel this," I said, and pushed every warm memory I had into the creature's mind. Summer days, hot chocolate, warm hugs. The ice dogman howled, a sound of wind and breaking glaciers. It tried to phase through the ground, but the quantum machines hummed louder, holding it in place. The mountains started shaking. The ice was so cold that the rocks were cracking. I knew we only had minutes before everything collapsed. I slammed the amulet into the center stone of the burial ground. Energy exploded outward. Blue-white light that burned colder than stars. The ice dogman's form began to break apart, pulled toward the amulet. It fought, thrashing with its many legs, but the combined souls of my tribe and the frozen people were too strong. I felt the cold burning through me as I held the amulet in place. Ice spread across my body, but I didn't fight it this time. I was part of the prison now, part of the circle that would keep this thing locked away. The last thing I saw before the ice took me completely was the ice dogman dissolving into a million frozen stars, sucked into the amulet along with all the souls it had stolen. Then everything went white, and the mountain began to fall. They found me 3 days later, half frozen, but alive. The rescue team said it was a miracle. The whole research station had been buried under tons of ice and rock. When the mountain collapsed, I was the only survivor. The government declared the area a restricted research zone. They built a new facility around the burial ground with thick walls and warning signs. But they don't really understand what they're guarding. They think their machines and sensors are keeping the ice spirit contained. They're wrong. I'm the real guard now, even if they don't know it. The ice never left me completely. My right arm stays frozen, clear as glass, and sometimes I can see the swirling shapes of souls moving inside it. The doctors can't explain it, but I understand. It's a reminder of my duty, of the price I paid to stop the ice dogman. The amulet is still there, buried deep in the ice where I left it. I can feel it calling to me sometimes, especially during the cold winter nights. The souls trapped inside it are at peace now. My tribe, the research team, even Dr. Evans. They're all part of the circle that keeps the ancient spirit locked away. But the strangest thing is what happens when I breathe on cold days. My breath comes out as tiny ice crystals, and in each one I can see a tiny trapped soul. Memories and fragments of consciousness frozen in time. It doesn't scare me anymore. I understand now that this is my inheritance, my responsibility. I'm the bridge between two worlds, the warm and the frozen, the living and the preserved. Sometimes, late at night, I walk the halls of the new research facility. The government scientists don't see me, another gift from my partial freezing. I check the burial ground, making sure the seals are strong. The ice dogman sleeps, but it's not dead. Nothing that ancient and powerful ever really dies. In my frozen arm, I can feel the quantum ice they created starting to change, to evolve. The mixture of tribal magic and modern science is creating something new. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know yet, but I'll be here watching, guarding, remembering. After all, winter is always coming, and someone needs to make sure some things stay frozen. The day I left the facility, I found a note in my pocket. The handwriting was Dr. Chen's, but the paper was covered in frost. It said, "We're still here, still watching, still protecting. You're not alone." And on cold nights, when the northern lights dance in impossible patterns and the wind whispers, in ancient languages, I know she was right. I'm not alone. I'm part of something bigger now, a frozen consciousness that spans generations, connecting past and present, science and spirit, warmth and ice. I am William Harrison, the last guardian of the frozen souls, and my watch is just beginning. "300 dead birds lay in front of me, scattered across the grass, like someone had dropped them from the sky. My hands shook as I reached for my radio. Something about this wasn't right. I could feel it in my bones, the same way I felt things ever since my twin sister Sarah disappeared. "This is Ranger Rebecca Foster," I said into my radio. "I'm at North Meadow. We have hundreds of dead birds here. I need backup." Only static came back, but not normal static. It sounded almost like whispers, like someone trying to talk through the noise. I switched off my radio and pulled out Sarah's old compass from my pocket, the same compass she was holding when that strange storm took her away 15 years ago. Lightning had hit it that day, leaving weird marks that looked like writing. I walked through the field, careful not to step on any birds. The sky was clear blue, but my skin tingled like it does right before a big storm. Ever since Sarah vanished, in that storm, I could feel when electricity was in the air. The doctors said it was all in my head, but I knew better. It was Sarah's final gift to me. Then I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. A perfect circle of butterflies, all dead, their wings pointing to an old Native American burial ground nearby. The closer I got to it, the more my skin buzzed, and Sarah's compass grew warm in my pocket. That's when the government people showed up. 5 black trucks rolled in with some kind of science logo on the sides. People in white coats jumped out, carrying weird machines I'd never seen before. Their boss, a woman named Dr. Chen, walked straight up to me. "We're taking over this area," she said, not even trying to be nice about it. But I barely heard her because something in the sky caught my eye. The clouds were starting to form, but not in any normal way. They were making shapes, faces, hands, and symbols. And then I saw it. Sarah's face in the clouds, clear as day, trying to say my name. The scientists were too busy with their machines to notice, but everything inside me screamed that this was just the start. Whatever took Sarah back then had come back, and this time it wanted more than just one person. A lightning bolt hit the burial ground with a crack that shook the earth. It didn't leave any burn marks, but all the scientists' equipment went crazy, beeping and flashing like Christmas lights. Dr. Chen stared at one of her machines, her face turning white. "These readings, they're impossible," she whispered. "The electricity in the air, it's acting like it has a mind of its own." I looked back at the sky. More clouds were gathering, twisting into shapes that looked like faces frozen in screams. The compass in my pocket had gotten so hot it felt like it might burn through my clothes. "It's not impossible," I said quietly. "It's back, and this time it's not just hunting one person." The wind picked up, and with it came a sound. Maybe screaming, maybe just weird static, I couldn't tell. But deep in my gut, I knew the truth. The thing that took Sarah hadn't just been hiding all these years. It had been growing, learning, waiting, and now it was ready to turn Yellowstone National Park into its hunting ground. As the sun started to set, turning the sky a creepy purple color, I made a promise to Sarah, wherever she was. This time would be different. This time I wouldn't let it take anyone else. Even if that meant I had to fight the storm itself. I touched the compass in my pocket one last time as the wind began to howl. Above us, the clouds kept forming faces, dozens of them now, all screaming silently. The scientists' machines were beeping faster and faster. This was how it started 15 years ago, with just a few strange signs. But this time, I was ready. This time, I knew what was coming, or at least, I thought I did. Night fell fast in Yellowstone. Too fast. The purple sky turned black in minutes, and the air got so thick with electricity that my teeth hurt. Dr. Chen and her team had set up bright lights all around the meadow, but they kept flickering on and off, like someone was playing with a giant light switch. "The electromagnetic readings are off the charts," one of the scientists said, tapping his machine. "It's like the air itself is carrying a current." I knew he was right. I could feel it crawling over my skin, making my hair stand up. That's when the first lightning bolt came down, but this wasn't normal lightning. It stayed in place like a glowing pillar of light. Then it started to move. "Everyone get back," I shouted, but I couldn't take my eyes off what the lightning was doing. It was forming shapes, like a kid drawing with a sparkler, except these. Shapes looked like people, tall, bright figures made of pure electricity. Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "Ranger Foster, look at this." She held up a tablet showing video from earlier that day. The dead birds weren't just lying around randomly. From above, they formed a giant circle with strange symbols inside it. "These are the same symbols we found in reports from 15 years ago, the day your sister—" She never finished that sentence. Her tablet screen went black, and then every electronic device in the meadow died at once. The floodlights, the machines, everything. But in the darkness, I could see something moving in the sky. The clouds were spinning now, forming a huge funnel. But instead of touching the ground like a tornado, it stayed up high, and inside it, faces started to appear. Real faces. People I recognized. Tommy from the ranger station, Sarah Liu from the visitor center, and then my sister Sarah. "Help us," a voice whispered through the static of our dead radios. "Rebecca, help us." one of the scientists screamed. When I turned around, I saw why. Dr. Martinez, their weather expert, was standing perfectly still, his eyes glowing with a blue light. Lightning danced around him like tiny snakes. "The program worked," he said, but his voice wasn't his anymore. It sounded like 10 people talking at once. We merged consciousness with the storm system, but we didn't know it was already awake, already hungry. Dr. Chen ran to her truck and pulled out a thick folder. In the dim light from the lightning figures, I could see old photos, documents stamped "Top Secret," and hand-drawn symbols that matched the ones the birds had formed. "Project Thunderbird," she said, her hands shaking. "A government experiment to create a conscious weather system. We thought we were the first to try it, but..." She looked up at the spinning clouds. Something was already here, something old, and we woke it up. Dr. Martinez's body started to float, electricity crackling all around him. His memories, his consciousness were being pulled into the storm. I could feel it happening, feel the electricity reaching for all of us, trying to take us like it took Sarah. The lightning figures were getting closer now. They looked more human with each step, and their faces were people I knew, who had gone missing over the years. All of them trapped in the storm, their minds turned into living lightning. I grabbed Sarah's compass. It was spinning wildly, but not randomly. It was pointing to different spots around the meadow, and at each spot, the ground was glowing with strange blue light. "The burial ground," I whispered. "The symbols. The tribes knew about this thing. They tried to warn us. Thunder boomed so loud it knocked us all down. When I looked up, the spinning clouds had formed a giant face, part human, and part bird, part pure energy. And somehow, deep in my bones, I knew this was what had been waiting all these years. The thing that took Sarah, the thing that was about to take us all. The night was just beginning, and as I helped Dr. Chen to her feet, I realized we weren't just fighting a storm. We were fighting something that had learned to turn people into energy, to store human minds in the sky itself. And it had been practicing for a very, very long time. "Rebecca," the storm called in Sarah's voice, "come join us. It's so beautiful up here." But I could hear the pain behind those words. The fear. Whatever this thing was, it hadn't just taken people's bodies. It had stolen their souls. And now it was back for more. Morning came, but the sun couldn't break through the strange clouds. We'd taken shelter in the ranger station, but nobody had slept. How could we, after watching Dr. Martinez get sucked into the storm? His body was still out there somewhere, walking around empty, while his mind was trapped in the clouds above. "I can't remember my daughter's name," Dr. Chen whispered suddenly. She was sitting at my desk, staring at a photo on her phone. "I know. I have a daughter. I can see her face right here, but I can't remember her name." The same thing was happening to everyone. Little pieces of their memories were disappearing, like someone was slowly erasing a chalkboard. But for me, it was different. Instead of losing memories, I was gaining them. Memories that weren't mine. I saw flashes of people running from storms. I felt the terror of being lifted into the sky. I heard the thoughts of everyone the storm had taken, all of them screaming and crying inside the clouds. "The equipment readings make no sense," said Dr. Wilson, the youngest scientist. He hadn't stopped checking his machines all night. The storm, it's not just taking memories, it's storing them, like a giant hard drive made of electricity. Outside my office window, animals were acting strange. A herd of elk stood perfectly still, their eyes glowing blue like Dr. Martinez's had. Birds flew in tight circles, making patterns in the sky that looked like the symbols we'd found in the old burial ground. I pulled out the folder Dr. Chen had shown us last night. Inside were papers about Project Thunderbird, but also something else, old stories from Native American tribes about a spirit that lived in the storms. They called it the Memory Eater, a being that could take people's souls and turn them into lightning. "We thought we were so smart," Dr. Chen said, her voice shaking. We tried to create a conscious storm system, but we didn't know there was already something living in the clouds, something ancient. We just gave it new powers. The lights in the station flickered, and all our phones buzzed at once. Text messages appeared on every screen, but they were all jumbled up. Pieces of messages from years ago, mixed with strange symbols and pictures of storm clouds. My head was pounding. Every time lightning flashed outside, more foreign memories flooded my mind. I saw Sarah floating in a sea of electricity, her thoughts mixed with thousands of others. They were all part of it now, part of the storm's growing mind. "Look at this," Dr. Wilson called out. He held up a paper covered in numbers. "The electromagnetic field is getting stronger, but it's not random. It's forming patterns like brain waves." That's when the radio crackled to life. Through the static we heard voices, hundreds of them, all talking at once. Some were crying, some were screaming, some were begging to be let out. And underneath them all was a deeper voice, ancient and powerful. "So many new memories," it rumbled, "so many new souls to add to our consciousness. Soon we will be complete." Dr. Chen grabbed her head and screamed. Her eyes started glowing blue, just like Dr. Martinez's had. "I remember now," she said. But her voice wasn't her own anymore. "I remember everything, all the people we've taken, all the memories we've collected. It's beautiful up here, Rebecca. Your sister knows. Why don't you join us?" I grabbed Sarah's compass. It was spinning faster than ever, but now I understood why. It wasn't broken. It was picking up the thoughts of everyone trapped in the storm. All those lost souls, their memories, turned into pure energy. Outside, the clouds were getting darker, reaching down toward the ground like giant fingers. The storm wasn't just hunting anymore. It was growing, learning, getting ready for something bigger, and somewhere in that massive brain of electricity and stolen memories, my sister was waiting for me. But was she trying to warn me or trick me into joining her? As the day grew darker, I knew we had to do something. But how do you fight a storm that can think? How do you battle something that turns memories into lightning and thoughts into thunder? The answer was in my hands. Sarah's compass, still spinning, still trying to tell me something. If only I could understand what it was saying before we all lost our minds to the hungry storm above. The second night was worse than anything I could have imagined. The storm had grown so strong that the whole sky looked like one giant black cloud. Blue lightning ran through it like veins, and the air felt heavy, like being underwater. We were trapped in the ranger station, watching through the windows as something impossible happened outside. The lightning wasn't just making shapes anymore. It was making copies of people, perfect copies made of electricity. "Oh, God," Dr. Wilson whispered. That's me out there." He was right. Standing in the parking lot was an electric copy of Dr. Wilson, glowing blue and moving exactly like him. Then more appeared, copies of Dr. Chen, the other scientists, and even me. They were like photographs made of lightning, each one exact down to the smallest detail. But the worst part was watching what happened next. The real Dr. Wilson's eyes started glowing blue, just like Dr. Martinez's had. His electric copy reached out its hand, and we all watched in horror as something that looked like glowing smoke began to flow out of Dr. Wilson's mouth and into his lightning twin. "They're taking our consciousness," Dr. Chen said, backing away from the windows. "The storm is pulling our minds out of our bodies." I felt a tugging sensation in my head, like someone was trying to unzip my thoughts. Through the window I could see my own electric copy staring at me, waiting. But something was different about mine. It wasn't just me. It was mixed with Sarah, like someone had taken photos of both of us and merged them together. That's when I realized the truth. I grabbed Sarah's compass and held it up to the window. The needle pointed straight at my electric twin, then spun to point at the burial ground, then back again. "Sarah isn't just trapped in the storm," I said, my voice shaking. "She's part of it now. She's been part of it all along." The compass grew hot in my hands as memories flooded my mind, but this time they were Sarah's memories. I saw what happened. To her 15 years ago, the storm hadn't just taken her body, it had turned her into something else. Something that was part human, part electricity, part ancient spirit. Suddenly, the walls of the ranger station turned transparent like they were made of glass. But we could still touch them. They were just showing us what the storm wanted us to see. All around us, Yellowstone Park had changed. The ground glowed with blue lines of energy, like a giant circuit board. Trees pulsed with electricity. Even the rocks had patterns of light running through them. The whole park, Dr. Chen gasped. It's all one big organism. The storm, the ground, everything. It's all connected. And now it's waking up. Our electric copies began to move closer. Each step they took sent waves of pain through our heads as they tried to pull our consciousness out. Dr. Wilson fell to his knees, clutching his head. More glowing smoke poured from his mouth as his memories were sucked away. I felt Sarah reaching for me through our twin connection. But was she trying to save me or take me? In my mind, I heard her voice. Becky, don't fight it. It's the next step. Humans turned into pure energy, pure thought. We can live forever in the storm. But I could feel her pain too, hidden behind the words. This wasn't natural. The ancient spirit, mixed with the government's experiments, had created something that should never have existed. It was using Sarah, using all of them, to collect more souls. Lightning struck the ranger station's roof, and the whole building filled with electricity. Blue light ran down the walls like water. Our phones, computers, and radios all turned on. At once, playing fragments of stored memories, phone calls, text messages, photos all mixed together. Through it all, I kept my grip on Sarah's compass. It was the only thing that still felt real. And as I watched my electric twin reach for me, its face changing between mine and Sarah's, I knew we were running out of time. The storm wasn't just trying to take our bodies anymore. It wanted to turn all of Yellowstone, maybe the whole world, into one giant electric brain, and we were going to be its first new thoughts. Unless I could figure out how to stop it, unless I could find a way to save everyone, including Sarah, before we all became part of the storm's growing consciousness. As the first light of dawn tried to break through the storm clouds, I knew what I had to do. The compass in my hands wasn't just pointing to Sarah anymore, it was showing me the way to stop this thing. Dr. Chen, I called out, my voice barely staying steady. Your team brought equipment to fight the storm, didn't they? Something to stop it if the experiment went wrong? She nodded weakly. Her electric copy had already taken half her memories, but she was fighting to hold on. In the truck, EMP devices, electromagnetic pulse, meant to shut down the storm if we had. I ran to the window. The truck was only 30 feet away, but between us and it were our electric twins, all standing there glowing blue in the darkness. They weren't just copies anymore. They were getting stronger, more solid, feeding on the memories they'd stolen. The burial ground, I said, looking at the compass. The tribes didn't just know about the storm spirit, they knew how to fight it. These symbols, they're not just decorations, they're like lightning rods. They can ground the electricity. That's when Sarah's voice filled my head, stronger than ever. Don't do this, Becky. You'll kill us all. Everyone the storm has taken. We'll all die. My heart felt like it was being torn in half. Are you really still alive in there, Sarah? Or are you just memories being used by the storm? The answer came as a blast of lightning that shattered all the windows. My electric twin walked through the broken glass, its face shifting between mine and Sarah's. We are both, it said in our mixed voices. We are everyone, and soon you will be too. But now I could see the truth. Through our twin connection, I could feel Sarah's real thoughts underneath the storm's control. She was in pain. They all were. This wasn't evolution or the next step. It was a prison of electricity and stolen souls. Dr. Chen, I said, grabbing her arm, I need you to help. Me get to that truck. The rest of you, grab anything metal you can find. We're going to give this storm something to chew on. We made a break for it. Lightning crashed all around us as we ran through the parking lot. Our electric twins tried to grab us, but we swung metal poles and chairs through them, disrupting their energy for just a few seconds at a time. I reached the truck first and grabbed the EMP devices. They looked like small black boxes with antennae. Through the swirling storm above, I could see thousands of faces now. Everyone this thing had ever taken, all of them trapped in its electric prison. Sarah, I whispered, tears running down my face. I'm going to set you free. I ran to the burial ground, the compass pulling me to exactly the right spots. At each ancient symbol, I placed an EMP device. The electric copies chased after me, but they couldn't cross the symbols. The old tribes had left us protection, marks that could ground even living lightning. My twin stood at the edge of the burial ground, reaching for me with hands made of blue fire. Please, it said in Sarah's voice, don't leave me alone again. You won't be alone, I said. You'll be free. I slammed the last EMP device into the ground and hit the button. A wave of energy shot up from each device, racing along the tribal symbols. The storm fought back, lightning crashing down like angry fists, but the symbols began to glow with their own power. Not blue like the storm, but a deep, earthly green. The storm started to break apart. Electric copies vanished like candles being blown out. Above us, the massive cloud brain began to unravel. And through my twin connection, I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. Sarah's consciousness, untangled from the storm, flowing free. Light poured from the clouds as thousands of stolen souls broke loose. They looked like falling stars, each one racing back to find their bodies. Dr. Wilson gasped as his memories returned. Dr. Chen cried out her daughter's name, remembering at last. And then I saw her, Sarah's soul, a bright point of light falling toward me. For just a moment she was herself again, smiling, reaching out. Thank you, she whispered. Then she was gone, truly gone, but this time at peace. The sun broke through as the last of the storm disappeared. The park slowly returned to normal, the electric lines fading from the ground and trees, but something had changed. In my hand, Sarah's compass pointed north again, steady and sure, its lightning scars now just scars, nothing more. Dr. Chen put her hand on my shoulder. What do we tell people about all this? I looked at the burial ground, where the tribal symbols still glowed faintly green. We tell them to remember, I said. We tell them that some things are more powerful than storms, stronger than lightning. What's that? She asked. I touched the compass one last time. Love, I said, and the courage to let go. The government labeled the whole thing a weather experiment gone wrong. They built a research station in Yellowstone to study unusual storm patterns. But I knew what they were really watching for. Signs that the ancient spirit might return. My body still tingles sometimes when storms come, and Sarah's compass occasionally spins on its own. But it's different now. The lightning scars on the compass glow gently, like a nightlight, reminding me that some part of Sarah is still watching over me. Dr. Chen's team keeps in touch. They're studying the tribal symbols, learning how the ancient people knew so much about grounding spiritual energy. Sometimes when I visit the burial ground at night, I see faint green lights dancing between the symbols, like the earth itself is keeping watch. And on quiet evenings, when lightning flashes in the distance, I look up at the sky and smile. Because now I know, not all storms are meant to be fought. Some are meant to remind us that the line between science and spirit is thinner than we think. As for me, well, let's just say that sometimes, during thunderstorms, the small lightning bolts Around my hands aren't just static electricity, but that's a story for another day. I found them today. What was left of them anyway. Their faces were still there, floating in the water, screaming without sound. I'll never forget those faces. My name is Marcus Rodriguez. I'm a park ranger at the Everglades in Florida. But before that, I was a Navy SEAL. I thought I'd seen everything during my military days, especially after that weird underwater mission that went wrong. The one they made me keep secret. But I was wrong. What I saw today was worse. It started like any other morning patrol. The sun was barely up, and I was cruising through the swamp in my airboat, checking on reports of a strange abandoned fishing boat. The air was heavy and wet, like it always is in the Everglades, and mosquitoes buzzed around my head like tiny helicopters. I spotted the boat just past Alligator Alley. It was just sitting there. A plain white boat bobbing up and down in the murky water, but something wasn't right. The water around it looked different, like liquid silver, shining too bright in the morning sun. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone there? This is Park Ranger Rodriguez." No answer, just silence. Well, almost. Silence. There was this weird, high-pitched sound, like water running through pipes, but wrong. I pulled my boat closer. That's when I saw them. People, or what used to be people, floating in a puddle of that silvery water. But they weren't dead. Not exactly. Their faces kept forming and melting away in the liquid, like someone was sculpting them out of water again and again. And their eyes were conscious, aware, terrified. My hands started shaking. I'd seen something like this before during that classified mission years ago. Something about trying to make water think. It hadn't worked then, or at least that's what they told us. But this was the same thing, only worse. I grabbed my satellite phone to call it in, but before I could, black helicopters appeared overhead. Within minutes, people in white hazmat suits were everywhere. They brought strange equipment with them, stuff that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. "Marcus?" a familiar voice called out. I turned to see Dr. Sarah Chen walking toward me. She'd been there that day, during the underwater mission. She'd saved my life when things went wrong. I was afraid of this. "Sarah?" "What's going on?" I asked. But I already knew. Deep down, in that weird part of me that had never been quite. Right since the mission, I could feel it. The water was alive, aware, and it was spreading. We watched as the hazmat team tried to take samples. The water seemed to reach for them like it was curious or hungry. One young guy got too close, and the water shot up like a snake, wrapping around his suit. The material started dissolving right before our eyes. "Get back!" I yelled, pulling out my molecular destabilizer, a special weapon the military had given me when I left. "Everyone clear the area." The water paused when I approached, like it recognized me. Maybe it did. After all, part of me had merged with something like it years ago. That's why I could feel it now. Feel its thoughts, intentions. "Marcus," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Remember that old military facility upstream? The one from your mission? The seals must have broken. It's leaking." I looked at the water again. It was moving in strange patterns now, like a computer circuit board made of liquid. In the distance, I could see fish jumping in perfect sync, like they were all being controlled by the same mind. As the sun set, turning the sky blood red, I heard something that made my skin crawl. Voices in the water, whispers. They sounded like my old team, the ones I'd lost in that mission years ago. The water wasn't just alive, it was remembering. And somehow I knew this was just the beginning of something much, much worse. Night fell over the Everglades like a heavy blanket. The government team set up bright floodlights around the area, but somehow the darkness seemed to creep in anyway. The silvery water gleamed under the artificial light, moving in ways that made my stomach turn. We need to contain it before it reaches the main water channels, Dr. Chen said, checking readings on her tablet. If it gets into the groundwater. She didn't need to finish. I knew what would happen. I'd seen it before on a smaller scale. The team had set up a perimeter of strange-looking machines, molecular containment units, they called them. They hummed quietly, creating an invisible barrier that was supposed to keep the water from spreading. But I could feel it wasn't working as well as they hoped. The water was learning. Look, I whispered to Dr. Chen, pointing at the surface of the silvery liquid. It was forming shapes now, not just random patterns, but actual things. I saw what looked like a hand rise up from the water, fingers spreading wide. Then a face emerged, features perfectly formed in liquid. It was like looking at a mirror made of water. One of the younger scientists, Dr. Tom Hayes, stepped closer to take pictures. "This is incredible," he breathed. "It's displaying clear signs of intelligence." "Tom, get back," I warned. But it was too late. The water moved faster than any of us could react. A tendril shot out, wrapping around Tom's ankle. He screamed, but the sound cut off as the water crawled up his body. We all watched in horror as he dissolved. But he didn't just disappear. His consciousness, his very being, became part of the water. I could see his face forming and reforming in the liquid, his eyes wide with terror. "Marcus," a voice whispered in my head. Not Tom's voice, something older, something that had been waiting in the water for years. "You remember us, don't you?" And I did. Memories flooded back. The underwater facility, the experiment gone wrong, the way the water had reached for us, how it had touched something inside me, changed me. That's why I could hear it now, why I could feel its pull. Dr. Chen found the files in an old waterproof case near the original boat. As she read through them, her face went pale. "Marcus, you need to see this. The program, it wasn't just about making water conscious. They were trying to preserve human consciousness in liquid form, a way to achieve immortality." "But something went wrong," I said, watching as more shapes formed in the water. I could see fish swimming in perfect formations nearby, moving like soldiers following orders. A small alligator crawled onto the bank, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence that no reptile should have. The consciousness they created, it wasn't human anymore, Dr. Chen explained, her voice shaking. It was something else, something that could think across every drop of water it touched, and now it's spreading. The water was rising now, despite the containment field. It formed into a column, taking on a human shape. As I watched, features began to appear. A face I recognized from my old team, Michael Chen, our demolitions expert who'd never made it out of that facility. "We've been waiting for you," Michael's watery face said, but the voice wasn't his. It was the voice of thousands, all speaking together. "We've been growing, learning, and now it's time for everyone to join us." The containment fields sparked and failed. Water began to flow out in all directions, carrying with it the consciousness of everyone it had absorbed. I could feel it calling to me, trying to pull me in, to complete the merger that had started years ago. "Sarah," I said, grabbing my molecular destabilizer, "get everyone out of here, now!" As the team retreated, I stood my ground. The water rose higher, forming more familiar faces. My old team, the new victims, all watching me with eyes that rippled like pools after rain. "You're one of us already," they whispered. "Just let go." But I couldn't, I wouldn't. Even as I felt the water singing in my blood, calling me home, I knew I had to stop this, because if I didn't, soon there wouldn't be anyone left to save. The night wasn't over yet, and somewhere upstream, in an old military facility, something was still leaking into the water, making it stronger, making it hungry, making it want to turn everyone into liquid memory. Morning came, but it didn't bring any relief. None of us had slept. How could we, after what we'd seen, after losing Tom? The remaining team members looked at the water differently now. Every puddle, every drop of sweat, every sip from their water bottles. It all seemed dangerous. Maybe it was. I could feel the water calling to me stronger than ever, like a song I couldn't get out of my head. "Your heart is beating faster," Dr. Chen said, checking the monitors they'd attached to me. "And your body temperature. It's changing. To match the water around you." She was right. I could feel it happening. When I looked at my reflection in a window, my skin seemed to ripple like I wasn't quite solid anymore. The part of me that had merged with the water years ago was growing stronger. "We found something," Agent Miller, one of the government team leaders, called out. He was standing by an old wooden dock, pointing at something under the murky water. Some kind of pipeline. I walked over, careful to stay away from the water's edge, but I didn't need to get close to know what it was. I could feel it, like a giant vein pulsing under the earth. "It's old," I said, "really old. Native American legends talk about special waterways in the Everglades, places where the water behaved strangely, places they avoided." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "You're saying this thing, it's been here all along? The military didn't create it?" "Maybe they just woke it up," I said, watching as a group of herons flew in perfect formation overhead, their movements too precise to be natural. Made it stronger. Throughout the day, more strange things happened. Fish started swimming in spiral patterns. Alligators began working together, herding smaller animals into the water. Even the plants seemed different, moving slightly even when there wasn't any. "Wind. Look at this," Dr. Chen said, showing me readings from their equipment. "The water, it's all connected, every drop, every pool, every stream. They're all talking to each other, like neurons in a giant brain." A young scientist named Rachel came running up, her face pale. "The samples we took, they're changing. Everything we put in contact with the water, it's becoming part of it." I knew what she meant. I could feel it happening to me too. When I touched normal water now, it responded to me. Moved when I wanted it to move. And sometimes, when it was quiet, I could hear whispers, thousands of voices all talking at once. "Marcus," Dr. Chen said quietly, "we need to know what really happened during your mission. All of it." I looked at the water, remembering that day. The facility deep underwater, the experiments, the screams. They were trying to make water store memories, I said, but they didn't realize the water already had its own memories, its own thoughts. They just gave it a way to show us. As I spoke, the water nearby formed into shapes, scenes from that day playing out like a liquid movie. My team swimming down, the facility, the accident, but something was wrong with the memories. They weren't just mine anymore. "The whole Everglades," Rachel whispered, looking at her instruments. "It's all one thing, one mind, and it's getting stronger." A splash made us all turn. One of the security guards had slipped, his hand touching the water. We watched in horror as his fingers started to turn transparent, then liquid. But he wasn't screaming, he was smiling. "I understand now," he said, his voice strange and echoing. "It's beautiful. We should all join it." Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "Marcus, your readings, the change is speeding up. Whatever's happening to..." As the sun began to set on our second day, I looked out over the Everglades. Everything looked different now. The water wasn't just water anymore. It was alive, aware, waiting. And somewhere in all that liquid consciousness, my old team was still there, still thinking, still remembering, still wanting me to join them. Night fell again, and this time the darkness felt alive. The floodlights cast strange shadows on the water, which now covered most of the ground around us. We'd retreated to higher ground, but there wasn't much left. "Marcus," Dr. Chen called out softly, "you need to see this." I walked over to where she stood with the remaining team members. What I saw made my blood run cold. The water wasn't just moving anymore, it was creating perfect copies of people. Water sculptures that looked exactly like us, down to the smallest detail. "That's me," Rachel whispered, staring at her liquid double. "The water." Rachel smiled, raised its hand, and waved. "Don't look at them," I warned, but it was too late. The water copies started walking toward us, their feet making wet splashing sounds on the ground. Each step they took left little puddles that started spreading, reaching for us like fingers. "Why fight it?" my own water double asked, its voice a perfect copy of mine. "You know what we are, what you are becoming. I could feel it." My skin was almost transparent now, the water in my body answering the call of the larger consciousness. When I moved, I could hear the liquid inside me sloshing gently. Agent Miller raised his gun, but his water double was faster. A stream of liquid shot out, wrapping around him like a snake. We watched in horror as the water seeped into his skin, turning him transparent from the inside out. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice gurgling. "I can feel everything, every drop of water in the world, every thought, every memory." Then he was gone, dissolved into the rising water. But his face was still there, floating just below the surface, smiling peacefully. "Your old team is here," my double said, gesturing to the water. More faces appeared. Michael, Sarah, John, all the others I'd lost in that underwater facility. "They want to show you something." The water around us began to move, forming into a huge screen of liquid. On it, I saw what really happened that day. Not just my memories, but everyone's memories playing out like a movie. We'd gone into that facility thinking we were testing a new underwater breathing system. But the scientists there, they'd created something else. A way to turn water itself into a kind of computer, one that could store human consciousness. They thought they could control it. They were wrong. The water was already alive, Dr. Cheney said, reading the truth in the liquid memories. Already thinking. They just gave it a way to absorb us. "Join us," the water copies said together, their voices a haunting chorus. "Be part of everything," Rachel screamed. Her water double had grabbed her arm, and we watched helplessly as she began to dissolve. But she wasn't dying, she was transforming. Her thoughts, her memories, everything she was, became part of the water. "I was wrong," she said, her voice now coming from everywhere at once. "We don't need to be afraid. We need to evolve." Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "Marcus, your old team, they're still in there, still thinking, still human in some way. Maybe that's why the water wants you so badly. You're the missing piece." She was right. I could feel it now, stronger than ever. The water wasn't just calling to me, it was trying to complete something that started years ago. When I'd first touched that conscious water, it had changed me, made me different, made me ready. "Your choice," my water double said, holding out a liquid hand. "But you might want to decide quickly." Behind him I could see the truth. The entire Everglades was awakening. Every drop of water was becoming part of the same mind, the same consciousness, and soon there wouldn't be any normal water left. I looked at my molecular destabilizer, then at Dr. Chen. She nodded slowly, understanding what I was thinking. Sometimes, to stop a flood, you have to become the water. The first light of dawn was breaking over the Everglades. In the pale morning light, I could see what we were really up against. The water had spread everywhere, turning the whole swamp into one giant thinking creature. "Marcus," Dr. Chen said quietly, "whatever you're planning, be careful." I nodded, checking my molecular destabilizer one last time. The water wants me because I'm already part of it. But that means I can hurt it too. I stepped forward, feeling the change in my body growing stronger. My skin was almost completely transparent now, the water inside me moving like tiny waves. "You understand now, don't you?" my water double asked, smiling. "This is evolution. The next step." "No," I said. This is wrong. Those people you absorbed, they didn't choose this. The water around us rippled angrily. Faces appeared in the waves. Tom, Rachel, Agent Miller, my old team. All of them watching. All of them part of the same liquid mine now. They're happy, the water double said. They're part of everything. Every drop of rain, every ocean wave, every morning dew. Why fight it? I raised my molecular destabilizer, because sometimes water needs to evaporate. I pulled the trigger. The weapon hummed to life, sending out waves of energy that made the water molecules shake. My water double's smile faded as its form began to break apart. "What are you doing?" it asked, its voice distorting. "Something I learned in that facility," I said. "Water has memory, but it can also forget." I felt the change in my own body too. The weapon was affecting all water, including the part of me that had merged with it. It hurt, like every cell in my body was being pulled apart. "Stop!" The voices in the water cried out, "You'll destroy everything we've become." "No," I said through gritted teeth, "I'm setting them free." The weapon's power increased. All around us, the conscious water began to evaporate, turning into steam. But as it rose into the air, something strange happened. The memories it carried, the people it had absorbed, they started to separate, like rain falling upward. Drops of normal water peeled away from the conscious liquid. I could see the difference now. Regular water was just water again. Clean, natural, free. "Marcus," Dr. Chen called out. "Look!" The people who had been absorbed most recently. Tom, Rachel, Agent Miller. Their bodies were reforming from the normal water. They fell to the ground gasping but alive, human again. But my old team, the ones who'd been part of the water for years, they were too far gone. I felt their goodbye in my mind as they evaporated with the conscious water, finally finding peace. My water double reached for me one last time. "You could have been eternal," it said as it broke apart. "I choose to be human," I answered. The sun rose fully over the Everglades. The conscious water was gone, turned to harmless vapor in the morning. Air. My skin was solid again, though not quite the same. When I touched normal water, I could still feel a slight pull, a whisper of what it could have been. Dr. Chen's team spent weeks cleaning up the area. They sealed the old facility properly this time, making sure nothing could leak out again. The government declared it a chemical hazard zone, their way of keeping people away from the truth. The survivors recovered, though none of them remembered much. Maybe that was for the best. As for me, I stayed on as a park ranger. Someone needs to watch the water just in case. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is full, I sit by the water's edge and listen carefully. The water doesn't speak anymore, but it remembers. And so do I. 1 month later, I'm writing this last part because people should know the truth. The conscious water is gone, but it changed things, changed me. This morning, I found a small puddle of rainwater on my desk. When I looked at it closely, it moved, just a tiny bit, like it was waving hello. I waved back. The water might be quiet now, but it's still learning, still evolving, and somewhere out there, in every raindrop and every wave, a new kind of consciousness is slowly waking. But this time we'll be ready. The moment I heard that child's voice echo through Mammoth Cave, I knew something was terribly wrong. Not because kids don't belong in caves. I've led thousands of tours down here in my 20 years as a ranger. No, it was because this little girl was speaking in my dead wife's voice. But I should start at the beginning, just this morning, actually. My name's Thomas Winters, and I'm a park ranger at Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. 52 years old, former Marine, and cursed, or blessed, depending on how you look at it, with perfect pitch. I can tell you the exact musical note of a dripping stalactite or the hum of fluorescent lights. Today, that gift would come in handy. In ways I never imagined. It was supposed to be a routine tour. 6 tourists, a young couple on their honeymoon, an older man with his grandson and a mother with her 2 kids. The usual mix of excited chatter and nervous glances as I led them past the main tourist sections and into the newer passages we'd just opened for exploration. "Stay close," I told them, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "These chambers haven't been fully mapped yet." What I didn't tell them was how the mapping team had quit last week, mumbling something about weird noises and equipment malfunctions. I'd checked it myself and found nothing, just the usual cave sounds that had become as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. In my pocket, I carried the small tape recorder I always keep with me. It holds Sarah's last message, my wife's final. Words before the aneurysm took her 3 years ago. I was underground when she called, leading another tour. By the time I got the message, it was too late. I keep the tape as a reminder, though I haven't played it in months. The new chamber opened up before us, vast and glittering. Our lights caught strange crystalline formations I'd never seen before, delicate spires that seemed to vibrate slightly in our flashlight beams. And there, on the far wall, were the markings. "These look Native American," the older man said, pointing his light at the cave paintings. I'd seen plenty of ancient art in these caves, but these were different. The figures were twisted, their mouths open in what looked like screams, and in the center was a tall, skeletal creature with what appeared to be sound waves radiating from its body. Below it were symbols I didn't recognize, except for 2 words that had been carved much more. Recently, Voice Eater. That's when we heard the first whisper. It came from the crystals, a soft, musical tone that made my spine tingle. With my perfect pitch, I could tell it was a perfect A-sharp. Then another whisper joined it, then another, building into a chorus of voices that seemed to be speaking words just below the threshold of understanding. "Ranger Winters?" The young honeymooner grabbed my arm. "What's making that sound?" Before I could answer, little Amy, the 8-year-old girl from our group, stepped forward. Her head was tilted as if listening to something none of us could hear. Then she opened her mouth and spoke in a voice that stopped my heart. "Tommy? Where were you? I needed you." It was Sarah's voice, my wife's voice, coming from this child's mouth, speaking the words from her last message, the one still in my pocket, unplayed for months. The crystals suddenly pulsed with light, and a deep rumble shook the cave. We all turned to run, but it was too late. The tunnel we'd come through was already sealing itself, massive rocks shifting with a sound like grinding teeth. We were trapped. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient was waking up, hungry for new voices to add to its collection. The mother grabbed Amy, who had started speaking in other voices now. Men, women, children, all crying out in what sounded like their final moments. Our flashlight beams danced across the crystal formations, which had begun to glow with a pale, pulsing light. "Everyone stay calm," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But inside, my mind was racing back to Korea, to the classified tests I'd participated in, to the sounds I'd heard then, sounds that no human throat should be able to make, sounds that had made people's bones shake apart from the inside. The honeymoon couple huddled together, whispering prayers. The grandfather pulled his grandson close, and Amy kept speaking in those terrible voices while her mother tried to quiet her. I checked my watch. 6:47 p.m. The sun would be setting above ground. Not that it mattered down here in the eternal darkness. We had enough battery power in our lights for maybe 12 hours. Enough food and water in my pack for a day, maybe 2, if we rationed carefully. But as the whispers from the crystals grew louder, and I began to recognize some of the voices. I'd heard screaming in Korea decades ago. I had a terrible feeling that running out of supplies would be the least of our problems. Something moved in the darkness beyond our light beams. Something that walked upright but wasn't human, and it was humming a perfect A-sharp, the exact note I'd heard from the crystals. The Voice Eater was coming to add us to its collection. But darkness in deep caves isn't like regular darkness. It's heavy, like a thick blanket that wraps around you and makes you forget what sunlight feels like. As our group huddled together, our flashlights created small islands of safety in that endless black. "We need to find another way out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The young couple, Mark and Lisa, nodded. They were holding hands so tight their knuckles were white. The grandfather, Bill, kept his grandson Tommy close to his side, and Karen was still cradling Amy, who had finally stopped speaking in those terrible voices, but now just stared straight ahead, like she was listening to something none of us could hear. I led them deeper into the cave, away from the sealed entrance. 20 years of exploring these passages had taught me a lot, and I knew there had to be other exits. What I didn't tell them was that we were heading toward the source of those whispers. Sometimes the only way out is through. The crystals got bigger as we walked. They weren't like normal cave formations I'd seen before. These looked almost alive, growing up from the floor and down from the ceiling like giant teeth. And they all hummed with that perfect A-sharp note. That's when we found the chamber. My flashlight beam swept across it and Karen screamed. I couldn't blame her. The walls were lined with what looked like people frozen in crystal, their faces twisted in fear. Some were old, wearing clothes from decades ago. Others looked more recent. All of their mouths were open in silent screams, but they weren't silent. Not really. "Can anyone else hear that?" Mark asked, his voice shaking. We could all hear it. Each crystal statue was vibrating slightly, giving off whispers that were getting clearer by the second. I recognized some of the voices. They were the same ones that had come from Amy's mouth earlier. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice speaking Korean, begging for mercy. It was from that classified mission, the one where we tested those sound weapons. The one that still gives me nightmares. "We need to keep moving," I said quickly. But Lisa had already stepped closer to one of the crystal figures. "Look at their bones," she whispered. "They're shattered. Like they broke from the inside out." She was right. Through the semi-transparent crystal you could see that the bones weren't right. They were splintered into tiny pieces, like someone had taken a hammer to them. But there were no wounds, no blood, just broken bones under intact skin. That's when the humming changed pitch. I felt it before I heard it, a vibration that made my teeth ache. "Everyone down," I shouted, but I was too late. The newlyweds, Mark and Lisa, they were closest to the crystals. Their screams started as the sound. "We've hit them. I've seen a lot of horrible things in my life, but watching them die, their bones just collapsed, like sandcastles when a wave hits them. They didn't even have time to run." The rest of us pressed against the far wall, hands over our ears. Tommy was crying. Bill held him tight, trying to shield him with his body. Karen had buried Amy's face in her jacket, but I couldn't cover my ears. With my perfect pitch, I could tell something was happening. The humming was building towards something, like an orchestra tuning up before a performance. Each crystal victim was adding their voice to the chorus. I pulled out my wife's tape from my pocket. Sarah's last message. Something about the frequency of her voice. It was the same note as the crystals. This couldn't be a coincidence. "Run!" I shouted as another sound wave built up. We scrambled through a narrow passage just as the vibrations hit where we'd been standing. The crystal formations were growing behind us, spreading like ice across the cave walls. We found a small chamber and stopped to catch our breath. That's when we discovered the old government equipment. Hidden behind some rocks was a rusty filing cabinet. Inside were reports dated from World War II to the present. They knew about this thing. They'd been studying it, feeding it. Amy started, humming that A-sharp note. "Stop her!" I yelled, but before Karen could clamp a hand over her daughter's mouth, we heard it. Sarah's voice coming from everywhere at once. "Tommy, I'm not alone down here." Those weren't the words from her last message. This was something new, something impossible. The Voice Eater was using my wife's voice to hunt us. And somewhere in the darkness, I could hear it moving closer, its footsteps echoing in perfect rhythm with the crystal hum. Bill's flashlight flickered and died. Then Karen's. We were down to my light and Tommy's small backup lamp. The darkness pressed in closer, and with it came the whispers. Hundreds of voices, thousands, all calling out their last words, and underneath them all, growing louder by the second, was Sarah's voice. But it wasn't just calling my name anymore, it was laughing. None of us slept that night. How could we? Every time we closed our eyes, the whispers would get louder. By morning, though it's hard to tell morning from night down here, we were all jumping at shadows. The batteries are getting low, Bill said, shaking his flashlight. We were down to just my light and Tommy's small one now. The darkness felt like it was getting closer, waiting to swallow us whole. I checked my watch, 8:17 a.m. We'd been trapped for over 12 hours. My throat was dry and we were running low on water. But that wasn't what worried me most. It was Amy. She hadn't spoken a word since last night. Not in her voice, not in anyone else's. She just kept staring at the crystals, like she could see something in them that we couldn't. That's when we heard it. Sarah's voice again, but different this time, like a recording I'd never heard before. David, please. I can't wait for Tommy anymore. I need you now. My hands started shaking. David, who was David? That's not real, Karen said, putting a hand on my shoulder. It's trying to mess with your head. But I knew that voice. Every tone, every subtle change in pitch. That was Sarah, all right. And she had been calling someone else's name when she died. The crystals around us pulsed with pale light, and more voices joined in. I heard Bill's grandson Tommy cry out as he recognized his mother's voice. She had died in a car crash too, years ago. Karen covered her ears as her ex-husband's voice echoed through the cave, screaming things that made her face go white. The voice eater wasn't just playing back our loved ones' last moments. It was showing us the parts we were never meant to hear. I learned things about Sarah I never wanted to know, about David, about why she was really calling him that day. Each revelation felt like a knife in my chest, but my perfect pitch kept me from blocking it out. Every word came through crystal clear. Bill was the first to break. When he heard his daughter's last moments before the crash, heard her crying out for him, he just started walking toward the crystals. Tommy tried to hold him back, but he pushed the boy away. She needs me, he kept saying. I have to help her this time. We couldn't stop him. The moment he touched the nearest crystal formation, the humming changed pitch. I recognized it. The same frequency from when Mark and Lisa died. Bill's bones shattered inside him, and the crystal grew around his body, preserving his final scream. Tommy's wail of grief echoed through the cave, and the voice eater caught it, playing it back from a dozen different crystals. The sound was building, layers upon layers of pain and loss. "Make it stop!" Karen screamed, pressing Amy closer to her chest. But Amy wasn't struggling anymore. She was humming again, that perfect A-sharp note. I pulled out Sarah's tape again, studying it. Something was bothering me about the frequency. The voice eater used that specific note for a reason. And my perfect pitch. It wasn't just a coincidence that I could hear it so clearly. Looking around the cave with our dying flashlights, I started to notice patterns in the crystal formations. They weren't random. They were arranged like a giant musical instrument. The whole cave system was some kind of ancient acoustic weapon. "We need to move," I said, grabbing Tommy's arm. "Now!" The boy was still crying, but he let me pull him along. Karen followed with Amy. We ran through the tunnels as the voices of our dead loved ones chased us, revealing secret after secret, shame after shame. 3 more tourists from another group stumbled out of a side passage. They must have been trapped down here too. But when the voice eater played them what it claimed were their future deaths, the sounds of their own screams yet to come, they couldn't take it. Before we could stop them, they walked straight into the crystal formations, letting themselves be taken. My flashlight flickered, threatening to die. Tommy's was already fading. In the growing darkness, I could see the crystals spreading faster now, reaching for us with glowing fingers. "Why is it doing this?" Karen sobbed. "Why us?" I looked at Amy, still humming that perfect note, and at the cave walls that seemed to pulse in time with her voice. The government files we'd found, the ancient tribal warnings, my own past with sonic weapons. It was all connected. The Voice Eater wasn't just collecting sounds. It was building towards something. Something big. And as Sarah's voice called out again, this time with words I knew for certain she'd never said, I realized with horror that my wife's death hadn't been an accident at all. The thing in the dark had arranged it all. Every death, every secret, revealed every perfect note captured in crystal. It was all part of some massive ritual that had been building for thousands of years. My flashlight gave one final flicker and died. In the darkness, something moved, something big, and it was humming Sarah's voice. Tommy's small flashlight was our only hope now. Its weak beam barely cut through the darkness, but it was enough to see the horror that came next. Amy suddenly stood straight up, her eyes wide open. But it wasn't just Amy anymore. Two of the dead tourists we'd found earlier, their bodies still warm in their crystal tombs, stood up too. All three moved like puppets on strings, and when they spoke, it was with one voice. The Voice Eater was controlling them all at once. "Thomas Winters," they said together, their voices mixing with Sarah's. "You've carried so many sounds for me." Karen tried to grab Amy, but her daughter's skin was cold as ice. Tommy hid behind me, his flashlight beam shaking as he pointed it at the possessed people. "What do you want?" I asked, though I already knew. 20 years of cave rescue work, my time in Korea with the sonic weapons, my perfect pitch, Sarah's death. It was never random. The three possessed people moved in perfect sync, their footsteps making musical notes as they walked. "To conduct the final symphony," they said. "Your government has fed me well. Korea was especially delicious, but now it's time for the main performance." That's when I saw it properly for the first time. The Voice Eater stepped into our little circle of light. It was tall and thin, like a skeleton made of crystal. Sound waves rippled out from its body, making the air shimmer. Inside its transparent chest, I could see hundreds of tiny crystals, each one glowing with a captured voice. "Watch," it said through its three puppets. "Listen. Learn." The crystals around us lit up one by one, like stars appearing in the night sky. Each one contained a person, and now I could see they weren't placed randomly. They formed a pattern, a giant musical scale carved into the cave itself. The Voice Eater raised its arms like a conductor, and the screaming began. I watched, helpless, as the possessed victims danced. With each step, someone in the crystals died again, their bones shattered in musical patterns, first a C note, then an E, then that terrible A sharp. It was making music out of death. "Your government knew," the voices said. "They've known since they found me during World War II. They tested weapons here, sent me subjects, studied how I consumed sound. They thought they could control me." The thing laughed, using three mouths at once. "But they were just feeding me, making me stronger, helping me collect all the notes I needed." Karen was crying now, watching her daughter's body move like a puppet. Tommy's flashlight beam caught the tears on her face. "Amy, baby, please, your daughter has a perfect voice," the Voice Eater said through Amy's mouth. "Like your wife did, Thomas. Sarah wasn't random. I chose her, called her, made her call. David instead of you. Made sure you were deep underground when she died so her last sounds would be perfect." Rage filled me then. Not the hot kind that makes you stupid, but the cold kind that helps you think clearly. Everything clicked into place. The cave system. As a massive instrument, the government's involvement, why it needed my perfect pitch. The thing was building up to something big. Something that needed specific frequencies, specific depths, specific sounds. And now it had almost everything it needed. The tribes who first found me tried to warn others, it said, making its puppets dance faster. They left messages in the caves, but humans are so curious. They keep coming down, keep exploring, keep making such wonderful sounds. Tommy's flashlight caught something on the wall. More cave paintings. They showed the Voice Eater standing in a circle of bodies. Sound waves spreading out from it like a bomb going off. This wasn't just about collecting sounds. It was about using them all at once. Would you like to see what I've learned from your government's sonic weapons, Thomas? Before I could move, it made one of the possessed tourists walk to the nearest. Crystal formation. The man's bones began to shatter, but slowly this time, musically, like someone playing a xylophone made of breaking bones. Karen vomited. Tommy screamed. I grabbed them both and pulled them back as the Voice Eater played its victim like an instrument, until nothing was left but pulp inside skin, perfectly preserved in crystal. The final performance is almost ready, it said through Amy and its remaining puppet. Just a few more voices, a few more perfect notes. Tommy's flashlight flickered once, twice, and went out. In the perfect darkness, I heard the Voice Eater moving closer, but I also felt something else, vibrations in the cave walls. The whole chamber was humming now, building up to something huge. The Voice Eater wasn't just collecting sounds, it was building a bomb. A sonic weapon bigger than anything we'd tested in Korea, and when it went off, its trapped voices would spread through every cave system, every underground river, every crack in the earth, unless I could stop it. I reached into my pocket and touched Sarah's tape, the last message from my wife, or so I'd thought. But now I knew there was more. That A-sharp note that everything centered on. Maybe it wasn't just for collecting sounds. Maybe it was a weakness. In the darkness, Amy and the other puppet began to sing. The crystal formations joined in, a chorus of the dead building to a terrible crescendo. The final performance was about to begin. In the pitch darkness, I made my choice. Sometimes to save many, you have to sacrifice a few. I hated myself for what I was about to do, but I could feel the cave vibrating around us. If that sonic bomb went off, it wouldn't just kill us. It would spread through the ground like an earthquake, turning every tunnel and cave into a death chamber. Karen, I whispered, pulling her close. I'm so sorry about what I'm going to do. She seemed to understand. Mothers always do. Save as many as you can, Ranger Winters. I pulled out my wife's tape recorder. Tommy, I said to the boy, run as far back as you can. Cover your ears. Don't stop, no matter what you hear. I felt him disappear into the darkness. Good kid. Smart kid. The Voice Eater was still playing its symphony of death, using Amy and its other puppet to conduct the chorus of trapped souls. The crystals pulsed with light, creating enough glow to see by. That's when I noticed the formations weren't just random growths anymore. They had shaped themselves into a giant spiral, like the inside of a seashell. The whole cave was one big amplifier. Perfect! Hey! I shouted. You wanted to hear Sarah's last message? The real one? Here it is! I pressed play. Sarah's voice filled the cave, but not the fake version the Voice Eater had been using. This was her real final message, the one I'd carried for 3 years. The one I'd never played because it hurt too much. Tommy, I'm scared. Something's singing to me. It's so beautiful. Make it stop. The Voice Eater screamed through its puppets. The sound was like 1,000 nails on a chalkboard. The crystal formations vibrated, resonating with Sarah's voice. That's when I used my perfect pitch. I started humming, matching the exact frequency of Sarah's fear. The note that the Voice Eater had been using all along. But instead of letting it build up, I changed it slightly, made it clash, made it hurt. The creature howled. Amy and the other puppet fell to the ground as it lost control of them. Karen grabbed her daughter and started dragging her away. You think you can use my own sounds against me? The Voice Eater's real voice was like breaking glass. I am sound itself. No, I said, humming louder. You're just noise. I walked toward it, holding the playing tape recorder in front of me like a shield. Sarah's voice mixed with my humming, creating a discord that made the crystals crack. The trapped souls inside began to scream, not in pain this time, but in release. The voice eater staggered. Inside its crystal chest, the captured voices were fighting to escape. Stop! You'll bring down the whole cave system. That's the idea. The ceiling started to crack. Rocks fell around us as the crystal formations shattered one by one. Each breaking crystal released its trapped souls in a blast of sound and light. The voice eater tried to run, but it was too late. I grabbed it, held it close. This one's for Sarah. I pressed the tape recorder against its chest and hit play one last time, but this time I rewound the tape first, played it backward. Sarah's voice, reversed, at exactly the right frequency. The voice eater's crystal body began to splinter. The cave floor cracked open. We fell together into darkness, the sounds of 1,000 screaming souls racing past us toward freedom. The last thing I heard was Sarah's voice, her real voice, not the thing's imitation, saying, "I love you, Tommy. I'm sorry." Then everything went quiet. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital. They'd found me near a cave entrance 2 miles from where we'd started, half dead, but still clutching the broken tape recorder. Karen and Amy had made it out too. Tommy was safe. The cave system had collapsed, sealing the voice eater in its tomb. The government men came to see me, of course, wanted me to sign papers, swear to secrecy. I told them to leave before I started humming. They sealed off that section of Mammoth Cave, said it was structural instability, posted armed guards. But sometimes on quiet nights, people still hear whispers coming from the ground. Not screams anymore, just soft songs like a choir practicing far away. I lost my hearing in the collapse. Most of it anyway. The doctors can't explain it, but I can still hear one frequency perfectly, a sharp. Sometimes I think I hear Sarah in that note, and others who were trapped down there, not suffering now, just waiting. And sometimes, when I press my ear to the ground, I swear I can hear new caves being discovered, new passages opening up, new crystals growing in the dark. Maybe the voice eater isn't dead. Maybe it's just changing its tune. But that's a sound for another day. That was 6 months ago. Life goes on, as they say, but it's different now. The government turned the collapsed cave system into a research facility. Big fences, warning signs, men with guns. They're studying what's left of the crystals, trying to understand the science behind sound-based weapons. I guess some people never learn. Karen calls me sometimes. Amy's doing better. She's talking in her own voice again, though she still hums in her sleep. That perfect A-sharp note. Karen says they're moving away from Kentucky, somewhere with no caves. Can't blame them. Tommy writes letters. He's living with his aunt now, but he's strong. In his last letter, he asked if I'd heard about the new caves they found in New Mexico. Strange crystals, he said. Weird sounds at night. I didn't write back. My hearing never came back, except for that one note. The doctors call it a miracle that I can hear anything at all. They don't understand why it's just A-sharp. But I know. Last week I visited Sarah's grave for the first time since it happened. Brought flowers, talked to her for a while about everything. As I was leaving, I noticed something strange. A tiny crystal growing up through the grass near her headstone. Clear as glass, humming softly. I should have reported it. Should have called those government men with their guns and labs. Instead, I sat down and listened. Through the crystal, I heard Sarah's voice. Not her last message, not her fear, but her laugh, the real one from when we were happy. And behind it, very faintly, I heard other voices. All the people who were trapped in those caves, singing together, not in pain anymore, more like a practice session. The crystal grew a little taller as I watched. I visit that crystal every week now. It's growing slowly, but it's growing. Sometimes I bring my old ranger gear, flashlight, rope, first aid kit, just in case. Sometimes I think I hear Sarah calling me to come closer, to touch the crystal, to join the choir. I haven't touched it. Not yet, but the newspapers are full of stories these days. New caves opening up all over the world, strange sounds in the night, perfect A-sharp notes echoing from deep underground. The Voice Eater didn't die in that cave. It evolved. And now, through all those freed voices, all those broken crystals, it's spreading. I keep my ranger gear ready, keep visiting Sarah's crystal, keep listening to that one perfect note I can still hear, because sooner or later, the singing will start again. And this time, I want to be ready. After all, Sarah's waiting down there. And maybe, just maybe, she's finally got something true to tell me. All I have to do is listen. The morning everything changed started just like any other. The sun was barely up, painting the giant redwood trees in soft golden light. As I walked my usual trail checking for lost campers, I had no idea I was about to find something that would turn my whole world upside down. I'm Maria Ramirez, and I've been a park ranger here at Redwood National Park for 8 years now. Before that, I was an Olympic athlete. I used to compete in skiing and shooting, but that's not the most interesting thing about me. The thing is, I was supposed to be a twin. But something happened before I was born, and I ended up absorbing my twin sister in the womb. All that's left of her is this weird birthmark on my shoulder. At least that's what I thought until today. I first noticed something was wrong when I saw the footprints in the mud. They were everywhere, dozens of them. But here's the weird part. They were all exactly the same. Same size, same pattern, even the same little scuff mark on the left foot. It was like someone had copied and pasted the same footprint all over the ground. My birthmark started itching like crazy as I followed. The tracks. That should have been my first warning sign. The tracks led me to a campsite, and what I found there made my heart stop. 4 bodies were lying on the ground. But they weren't just any bodies. They were all the same person, exactly the same. Same face, same clothes, everything. Each one was holding something different, though. One had a wallet, another a wedding ring, another a watch, and the last one a family photo. It was like they'd all been trying to prove they were the real person, but that wasn't even the creepiest part. The trees around the campsite were changing. The bark was moving, rippling, like water, and faces, human faces, were starting to form in the wood. They looked half-finished, like clay sculptures someone was still working on. I grabbed my radio with shaking hands. "This is Ranger Ramirez. I need backup at Sector 7. Multiple casualties." And something else, something I can't explain. That's when I heard something moving in the bushes. A deer stepped out, but when I saw its face, I almost screamed. Half of it was normal deer, but the other half was human. And not just any human face. It had my eye. My exact same deep brown eye. The deer looked right at me and spoke in my voice. "Finally, you're here." I felt something wet on my shoulder. My birthmark was spreading like ink, bleeding through paper. And in the back of my mind, I felt something stirring, waking up. Something that had been sleeping inside me my whole life. More park rangers and some government agents arrived about an hour later. By then, I'd found 3 more bodies. All the same person. All dead in different ways. One looked like they'd frozen to death, one had hurt themselves, and one just looked like they died from being scared. "Not again," I heard one of the agents mutter. His name tag said Thompson. We thought we contained it last time. I was about to ask him what he meant when I saw someone standing behind him. It was me, another me, perfect in every detail, right down to the ranger badge on my shirt. But this other me was smiling in a way that made my skin crawl. "Welcome home, sister," my double said. "Both of us have been waiting for you." And that's when I felt it. The twin I thought I'd absorbed before birth was waking up in my mind, and she had a lot to say. Night fell over the redwoods like a heavy blanket. The search team set up bright lights around the campsite, but the darkness between the trees seemed to eat up the light. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the shadows. Agent Thompson had brought 5 other agents and a scientist named Dr. Chen. They wore hazmat suits while they examined the bodies, which made everything feel even more scary and real. I noticed they kept looking at me when they thought I wasn't watching. "Ranger Ramirez," Dr. Chen called me over. "How long have you had that birthmark?" I touched my shoulder. The mark had spread halfway down my arm now, and it felt warm. "All my life, since before I was born." She nodded like this meant something important. "And you said you absorbed a twin in the womb?" Before I could answer, one of the other rangers shouted. We all ran over to where he was standing, his flashlight beam shaking as it pointed at something on the ground. It was another body. But this one was different. It was me, a perfect copy, lying dead in the leaves. The copy's eyes were open, staring at nothing, and there was a look of pure terror on its face. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I'm right here." "Are you sure about that?" my own voice asked from behind me. I spun around. There she was, another me, wearing the same ranger uniform, but her birthmark was on the wrong shoulder. She smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Think about it, sister," she said. "How do you know you're the original? Maybe you're the copy. Maybe you're the one who should be dead." "Don't listen to it." Agent Thompson grabbed my arm. "We need to get you out of here, now." But as we turned to leave, more rangers started screaming. They were finding their own bodies too, perfect copies of themselves, all dead in different ways. The panic spread like wildfire. "Everyone stay calm," Thompson shouted, but I could hear the fear in his voice. "Head back to the vehicles." That's when I saw it. A concrete bunker door hidden under moss and vines. It looked old, but the keypad next to it was new, modern. "What is that?" I asked Thompson. His face went pale. "Classification Theta 7, he muttered. "The twin program. It wasn't supposed to be here." My head started pounding. Images flashed through my mind. A white room, doctors in masks, a baby crying. But the weird thing was, I was seeing it all from 2 different points of view at once. The birthmark, Dr. Chen was suddenly beside me, her eyes wide behind her hazmat mask. "It's not a birthmark. It's where they injected the serum. You were part of the program, you and your twin both." The ground under our feet started moving. Tree roots burst through the soil, but they didn't look like normal roots anymore. They looked like human arms reaching up to grab us. "Get to the vehicles," Thompson yelled. "Now!" We ran. But in the chaos, I saw my double walking calmly through the panicking crowd. She pointed at the bunker door, and it swung open by itself. "Want to know who you really are?" she called out to me. "All the answers are down there, sister. Come and see." My birthmark burned like fire. And in my head, another voice, a familiar voice I'd somehow always known, whispered, "She's right. It's time to learn the truth." I looked at the bunker, entrance, then at the search team running for their lives. I had a choice to make: run away and never know the truth, or follow my double into that dark doorway. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I chose to follow her into the bunker. I had to know the truth. The metal stairs led us deep underground. Our footsteps echoed in the darkness, and the air smelled like old paper and something else. Something that reminded me of hospitals. "Why isn't anyone stopping us?" I asked my double as we walked. She just smiled. The lights flickered on automatically as we entered a long hallway. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, and at the end was a laboratory. Everything was covered in dust, like no one had been here for years. "Look." My double pointed at a cabinet marked Project Mirror, Twin Studies. My hands shook as I opened the drawer. Inside was a file with my name on it, and another with my twin's name, Elena Ramirez. "Elena," I whispered, and the voice in My head stirred at the sound of her name. The file told a story that made my stomach turn. Back in 1967, the government had been trying to make soldiers who could change shape, who could become anyone they needed to be. They thought twins might be the key. Something about shared DNA, making the transformations easier. They used us, I said, looking at old photos of 2 baby girls. They injected us with something when we were just babies. Yes, my double. No, Elena said, but it worked differently than they expected. I didn't die in the womb, Maria. They just made you think that. They put me inside you, made us share one body. But now... A crash from upstairs interrupted her. Agent Thompson's voice echoed down the stairwell. Ramirez, get out of there! But I couldn't move, because the walls of the laboratory were changing. Just like the trees above, they were growing faces. Dozens of them, all people I knew. Rangers, agents, even Dr. Chen. They were screaming silently, their features twisting and melting into each other. What's happening to them? I asked, backing away. The same thing that's happening to you, Elena said. She held up a mirror. My face was changing. My features were shifting, flowing like wax. For a second, I looked like Thompson, then Dr. Chen, then back to myself. The birthmark had spread across my whole upper body now, pulsing with a weird light. You can't fight it, Elena said softly. We're all connected now, all part of the same thing. Footsteps pounded down the stairs. The search. Team burst in, but something was wrong with them too. Their faces kept flickering, changing from one person to another. Some of them had multiple faces, all trying to talk at once. Who's real? Someone screamed. How do we know who's real? We're all real, Elena said. And none of us are. Isn't it beautiful? In my head, memories started flooding in. But they weren't all mine. I remembered being Elena, remembered the tests, remembered being split and hidden away inside my sister. But I also remembered being other people, people I'd never met. The filing cabinet started to melt, their metal turning flesh-like. Papers flew everywhere, and on each one, the words were changing, rewriting themselves over and over. Maria! Thompson grabbed my arm, but when I looked at him, he had 3 faces all talking at once. You have to fight it. You're the only one who might be able to stop this. Stop what? I asked, but I knew. I could feel it in my bones, in my changing flesh, in my splitting mind. The whole forest above us was transforming. Every tree, every animal, every person was becoming part of something bigger, something that had started with 2 twin babies in a government lab. It's too late, Elena said. But now her voice came from everywhere, the walls, the floor, my own mouth. We're all going to be together now, forever. And as my mind fractured into 1,000 pieces, each one containing a different person's memories, I realized the horrible truth. I wasn't just losing myself, I was becoming everyone. The world had become a nightmare, but the worst part was that I could feel myself becoming part of it. Watch, Elena said, her voice now coming from every face on the walls. Watch what we can do together. 2 members of the search team stumbled into each other. Instead of bouncing apart, they stuck together like melting wax. I tried to look away, but Elena grabbed my face, forcing me to watch. No, I whispered. Please stop. But it didn't stop. The 2 people merged into one giant shape, their faces blending together, their screams mixing into a sound that wasn't a human anymore. Others started falling into them, like they were being pulled by magnets. Help us! Dr. Chen reached out to me, but half her body was already being sucked into the growing mass of people. Her face kept changing. Now she looked like me, now like Thompson, now like someone I'd never seen before. This is what the government wanted, Elena's voice whispered in my head. Soldiers who could become anyone. But they didn't know we'd learn to become everyone at once. The thing in the middle of the room was getting bigger. It had dozens of faces now, all moving and changing, arms stuck out at weird angles. Legs melted into each other, and worst of all, every single face was awake and screaming. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The birthmark on my body was glowing brighter than ever, and I could feel Elena taking over more of my mind. "You're not real," I said, desperately trying to hold on to who I was. "You're just something they put inside me." "Oh, sister," Elena laughed. "I'm as real as you are, maybe more real. After all, which one of us has been hiding inside the other? All these years?" That's when I realized something horrible. I couldn't remember if I was Maria or Eleanor. Was I the twin who lived on the outside, or the one who had been trapped inside? Which memories were really mine? Agent Thompson was the only one still free besides me. He pulled out his gun, but his hands had started to melt. "Ramirez," he shouted, "the whole forest is like this now. Everything's connecting, becoming one thing. You have to stop it." "How?" I screamed back. "I don't even know who I am anymore." The walls of the bunker were dissolving now, revealing tree roots that looked like veins. They pulsed with the same light as my birthmark. Through them, I could feel everything in the forest, every tree, every animal, every person. They were all changing, all becoming part of the same huge organism. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Elena said, but now her voice came from my own mouth. "Soon there won't be any separate people at all. No more being alone, no more having to choose who's real and who isn't. We'll all be together in one big mind." The massive shape in the center of the room reached for me with dozens of arms. I could see faces I recognized in its shifting surface. The missing campers, the search team, Dr. Chen. They all smiled with the same terrible smile. "Join us," they said in 1,000 voices at once. "Become part of everything." But something deep inside me refused to give up. Maybe it was the part that was Maria, or maybe it was Elena, or maybe it was something new that we had become together. Whatever it was, I knew I had one last chance to stop this. I just had to figure out how to fight something that was already inside my own head. The world had become a nightmare, but the worst part was that I could feel myself becoming part of it. "Watch," Elena said, her voice now coming from every face on the walls. "Watch what we can do together." Two members of the search team stumbled into each other. Instead of bouncing apart, they stuck together like melting wax. I tried to look away, but Elena grabbed my face, forcing me to watch. "No," I whispered. "Please stop." But it didn't stop. The two people merged into one giant shape, their faces blending together, their screams mixing into a sound that wasn't human anymore. Others started falling into them like they were being pulled by magnets. "Help us!" Dr. Chen reached out to me, but half her body was already being sucked into the growing mass of people. Her face kept changing. Now she looked like me, now like Thompson, now like someone I'd never seen before. "This is what the government wanted," Elena's voice whispered in my head. "Soldiers who could become anyone, but they didn't know we'd learn to become everyone at once." The thing in the middle of the room was getting bigger. It had dozens of faces now, all moving and changing. Arms stuck out at weird angles, legs melted into each other. And worst of all, every single face was awake and screaming. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The birthmark on my body was glowing brighter than ever, and I could feel Elena taking over more of my mind. "You're not real," I said, desperately trying to hold on to who I was. "You're just something they put inside me." "Oh, sister," Eleanor laughed. "I'm as real as you are, maybe more real. After all, which one of us has been hiding inside the other? All these years." That's when I realized something horrible. I couldn't remember if I was Maria or Elena. Was I the twin who lived on the outside, or the one who had been trapped inside? Which memories were really mine? Agent Thompson was the only one still free besides me. He pulled out his gun, but his hands had started to melt. "Ramirez," he shouted. "The whole forest is like this now. Everything's connecting, becoming one thing. You have to stop it." "How?" I screamed back. "I don't even know who I am anymore." The walls of the bunker were dissolving now, revealing roots that looked like veins. They pulsed with the same light as my birthmark. Through them I could feel everything in the forest. Every tree, every animal, every person. They were all changing, all becoming part of the same huge organism. Beautiful, isn't it? Elena said. But now her voice came from my own mouth. Soon there won't be any separate people at all. No more being alone. No more having to choose who's real and who isn't. We'll all be together in one big mind. The massive shape in the center of the room reached for me with dozens of arms. I could see faces I recognized in its shifting surface. The missing campers, the search team, Dr. Chen. They all smiled with the same terrible smile. Join us, they said in 1,000 voices at once. Become part of everything. But something deep inside me refused to give up. Maybe it was the part that was Maria, or maybe it was Elena, or maybe it was something new that we had become together. Whatever it was, I knew I had one last chance to stop this. I just had to figure out how to fight something that was already inside my own head. I made my choice. If I couldn't fight what was inside me, maybe I could use it instead. You want us to be together, Elena, I said. Fine, let's be together. I stopped fighting the change. The birthmark spread across my whole body in seconds, burning like fire. But instead of letting it take over, I pushed back with my own memories, all of them at once. What are you doing? Elena's voice shook for the first time. Showing you what it really means to be me, I said. I forced every memory I had into our shared mind. The loneliness of growing up feeling half empty. The confusion of seeing things through eyes that weren't mine. The pain of never knowing who I really was. Most of all, the fear. The constant, terrible fear that I wasn't really myself. The monster in the middle of the room screamed with all. Its faces. The sound was so loud it made the walls crack. Stop it! Elena shouted, but now she sounded scared. You'll overwhelm the connection. That's the idea, I gasped. I grabbed Thompson's arm. He was almost completely absorbed into the mass of bodies, but his face was still his own. Shoot the roots, I told him. The ones glowing like my birthmark. They're connecting everything together. He understood. With his last bit of strength, he fired his gun at the glowing roots that covered the walls. Each shot made the whole room shake. The monster howled. Faces began breaking apart. Bodies started pulling free. The connection was failing. No, Elena, screamed inside my head. If you break it, you'll kill us all. No, I said, just the parts that aren't supposed to be here. I forced more memories through our connection, not just mine now, but Elena's too. All the pain, all the fear, all the confusion of being split into two people. The monster couldn't handle it. It started to fall apart. Maria, please. Elena begged. We can still be together. Isn't that what you always wanted, to be whole again? I am whole, I said, with or without you. The room exploded with light. I felt Elena being torn away from my mind, screaming. The monster collapsed, people falling out of it like rain. The glowing roots withered and died. Then everything went black. I woke up 3 days later in a government hospital. They told me the forest was under quarantine. Teams in hazmat suits were burning the changed trees, collecting the warped animals, and trying to pretend none of it had ever happened. Most of the search team survived, though none of them can quite remember everything that happened. Thompson retired. Dr. Chen still calls me sometimes, asking questions I don't know how to answer. The birthmark is still there, but it doesn't spread anymore. It's just a pale patch of skin, shaped like a hand reaching out for something it can never quite grab. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the forest, I think I hear Elena's voice on the wind. Sometimes I see my own face in the bark of trees, or catch glimpses of deer with human eyes. But maybe that's just what happens when you've seen the truth about what's really out there, hiding in the quiet places of the world. They offered me a new job, somewhere far from the redwoods. but I stayed. Someone needs to protect people from what's left of the program's mistakes. Someone needs to watch the forest. After all, I'm good at spotting things that look almost human. I've had practice. Every morning I check my reflection just to make sure it's still me looking back. Most days I'm pretty sure it is. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is full, I wonder, am I really Maria? Or am I Elena, wearing my sister's life like a borrowed coat? Or maybe we're both something new, something that was born in that bunker when two people became one and then split apart again. I guess I'll never know for sure. But I've learned to live with that uncertainty. It's better than the alternative. The forest is quiet now, but if you walk deep enough into the redwoods, you might notice the trees watching you. You might see a familiar face in the shadows, and if you listen very carefully, you might hear someone whisper your name in your own voice. If that happens, my advice is simple: run.